What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 1 Saw. Chapter 1 Traveling Through Shinigami, Understanding Heaven-Defying. Chen opened her eyes. She was a little confused at first, but she soon came to her senses. At a glance, everything in front of me becomes very strange. A touch of fish belly white appeared on the horizon, and the bright red sun slowly rose, reflecting the earth and sky into a rusty dark red. The dry land is dotted with a few dead trees, and the branches are as dry as the arms of a dying person. Except for some green moss that can be seen in the cracks in the soil, it is difficult to see any green that represents life. My throat seemed to be smoking, and I was terribly thirsty. Where is this? Didn't I keep changing the plan all night long? I just remember my brain twitching at the end. Sudden death. Then a lot of memories flooded into my mind. This is Soul Society Rukongai District 80 Zaraki District. It is the most barren area in the entire Soul Society, and water is an absolutely precious commodity here. Food is not that important. Ordinary civilians cannot use spiritual power and do not feel hungry. It only needs to take in the necessary water and the spirit seeds in the atmosphere to survive. However, starting from Area 78, there was a serious shortage of water, making it one of the targets of theft and robbery. Some people even treat drinking water as goods and sell it for profit. I didn't expect to travel to the Shinigami world, so that's fine. It's a pity that I feel sorry for my parents and family. After thinking about the current situation, Chen felt very thirsty. Hiss. Chen took a breath of air and felt smoke rising from her throat. Nima, the beginning of the collapse of heaven. You don't even have water and you're about to die of thirst. System. Cheat. Chen tried calling the system, but there was no response. No way. Chen's heart gradually became cold. Isn't there a system? At this moment, a voice sounded deep in his mind. You awaken the wisdom of your previous life, receive the blessing of the Earth's mother planet, your talents are strengthened, and your understanding is raised to the heaven-defying level. Close black lens bracket. In an instant, Chen felt that not only his spiritual platform, but also his thinking and ideas had been greatly improved. And his understanding has improved hundreds of thousands of times, reaching an inhuman level. Just a little thought, and countless inspirations will burst out. He also has the ability to have a photographic memory. All memories are like movies, and every detail can be clearly played back and reproduced. Can understanding heaven-defying be treated as water to drink? Chen is going to scold her. But he soon realized that although heaven-defying comprehension cannot be used as water to drink, it can solve the water problem. Perhaps because his understanding has been highly strengthened, he has understood the nature of water and why the soul needs water. Essentially, it just requires the energy provided by the spirit sun. As long as you can get enough spiritual energy from the atmosphere, you won't have any problems even if you don't eat or drink. And even if you need to drink water, you can extract water from the atmosphere. Chen sat down cross-legged and contemplated quietly. You try to analyze the composition of spirit particles in the atmosphere, combine it with your past life experience, and understand the method of turning gas into water. Close black lens bracket. Chen quickly opened her eyes and was overjoyed. It seemed that when a person is thirsty, laziness and cancer are cured. He reached out and tried to control the atmospheric water around him. The water vapor in the atmosphere gathered on Chen's palm, and soon formed a handful of water. Chen drank it quickly, with a little sweetness. Oh my god, water has never tasted so delicious. Drink some more. It wasn't until Chen burped that he patted his belly with satisfaction. At this moment, Chen suddenly felt that he was being watched. The dark corner that originally seemed empty suddenly had many people with murderous intentions on their faces. After seeing Chen, these people licked the corners of their mouths murderously and charged towards Chen. There isn't much reason. The law of survival here is that the weak eat the strong. Trust and friends do not exist here. The man in front of him smiled cruelly, raised the sharpened long knife in his hand and slashed at Chen. In his opinion, Chen had been stunned, so he remained motionless. However, in the eyes of Chen, who has heaven-defying understanding, the trajectory of the knife seems to have slowed down tens of thousands of times. It is like watching a movie, and he can clearly see every frame of the long knife. And he can also accurately know all the subsequent changes of this sword, as well as all the flaws of this sword. You watch the Rukongai gangster's beheading technique, and combine it with your previous life experience to create your own style. The autumn wind rises. Close black lens bracket. It has to be said that the sword skills learned from killing are direct and decisive, without any wasted power. End the other person's life at the minimum cost and in the shortest time. At some point, he had snatched the opponent's knife. Draw the knife. See blood. The cold light of the blade seemed to freeze the blood that splattered out. As cold as the autumn wind and as fast as lightning. Is this the autumn wind rising? You can even clearly see the stunned look on the enemy's face before he died, as if he was thinking, how could this be possible? When did your knife get into the other party's hand? What kind of sword technique did the opponent use? It's so fast and so beautiful. Su Chen was also surprised at his own adaptability. He didn't feel any discomfort when he killed someone for the first time. Perhaps human beings' adaptability is far stronger than he imagined. Then Su Chen stabbed him one after another, killing other lives. You practiced sword skills, gained some insights, and successfully understood the second form, Da Yin Shi Sheng. Close black lens bracket. You practiced sword skills, gained some insights, and successfully realized the third form, a dream of floating life. Close black lens bracket. You integrated the three moves and successfully created the falling leaf knife technique. Close black lens bracket. As the pile of corpses in front of him got higher and higher, Su Chen gradually felt a little tired of killing. His thoughts spread out. Since I have not yet mastered Reiatsu, how did I control the water vapor in the outside world just now? The essence of water vapor is also a kind of spirit sun. Does it mean that he can understand the method of controlling the spirits in the atmosphere? Su Chen stood on the same spot without even moving a step. His sword skills had reached a level where he didn't need to think about it and could naturally deal with the people who came up one after another. The mind is used to sense the spirits in the atmosphere and try to control them. You have successfully understood the essence of all things in Soul Society and learned Spirit Collection and Spirit Arms. Close black lens bracket. When the enemy's long sword struck the hard spirit shield and flew away instantly. At some point, a blue spirit shield appeared in front of Su Chen. The edge of the spirit shield is blurred, and the surrounding spirit particles gather into the shield bit by bit like galaxy stardust. Since the spirit sun can be converted into a shield, can it also be converted into a sword? As Su Chen's thoughts fell, the shield in front of him deformed bit by bit and turned into a long sword. And in front of him, the blue spirits in the atmosphere gathered at his command, forming long swords one after another. Go. With one word, dozens of long swords flew out, killing all those who wanted to take Su Chen's life. Su Chen looked at the pile of corpses in front of him and felt relieved, but this experience also made him understand that it would be impossible to be in Soul Society without strength. You must first find a way to strengthen yourself, and you must first have a powerful Reiatsu. The strength of the Reiatsu residing in the spirit is called spiritual power. The spiritual power of ordinary team members is level 20. The vice captain is ranked 4 to 5. The captain is level 3 or above. Sit down cross-legged and calmly comprehend the spirits around you. You are trying to understand the Reiatsu training method. Chapter 2, Swallowing Heaven and Earth. With this realization, Su Chen quickly entered a state of selflessness. The spirits in the atmosphere around him also entered a state of change and chaos, so that no one dared to approach Su Chen's position. Maybe this can be done. The surrounding spirits levitated and entered Su Chen's body with Su Chen's breath, strengthening his Reiatsu. Breathing happens all the time. If you can incorporate the Reiatsu practice method into your breathing, does that mean you can practice Reiatsu all the time? Then Su Chen tried it and realized that the amount of atmospheric spiritual particles that his breathing could absorb was too few, and it could only maintain the energy needed for the survival of those without spiritual power. This speed of practice is really too slow. Is there a faster way to practice? Since the path of cultivating by absorbing atmospheric spirits is feasible, but the absorption speed is too slow, I just need to increase the amount. Quantitative changes produce qualitative changes, scientific practice. As Su Chen continued to try out his ideas, the surrounding spirits continued to riot. Correct. That's it. Su Chen opened his eyes. Although he was a little tired, all the efforts were worth it. The light in his eyes was bright and exciting. This is definitely an invincible Reiatsu training method. It can even directly improve his Reiatsu by leaps and bounds. You combined your previous life experience and successfully created the skill, swallowing the sky and devouring the earth. Close black lens bracket. Swallow the sky and devour the earth. Turn yourself into an infinite black hole, absorbing all the surrounding pure spirits into your body, and enhance Reiatsu. Close black lens bracket. Gradually, the surroundings of Su Chen's body seemed to turn into a rich black that swallowed everything. This black is deep, mysterious, and majestic. A terrifying gravity radiated from Su Chen's body. The spirits in the atmosphere gathered crazily towards where Su Chen was. Even the earth beneath his feet and the clouds in the sky were disintegrating bit by bit. If you look down from the sky, there is a huge storm blowing in West Rukongai 80 district. The center of the storm is Su Chen. This sudden change in the world in Rukongai District 80 quickly alarmed Seraiti. Division 12, Technology Development Bureau. Thanks to a network device developed by the Technology Development Bureau, the scope of monitoring Reiatsu can cover almost the entire Soul Society. No matter where there is a major energy riot, it can be detected quickly. However, at this moment, Yaozhou, the head of the Communication Technology Research Section and Radio Wave Measurement Section, had a look of disbelief on his face. The appearance of Yaozhou is no longer humanoid. It can be said that there is almost no neck, and the head and body are directly connected together. There is a suture line on the top of the head, a rotating joystick protruding from the left temple, and a big mouth that grins almost to the base of the ear. Yashu came to work at the Technology Development Bureau as usual. He thought this day would be another casual day, observing Seraiti and the radio waves of the world to see if there were any novel discoveries. Of course, Yajo didn't hold out much hope. After all, there weren't many things that could surprise him. As for Rukongai, there is nothing more than a residence for some civilians, the Reiatsu. The Reiatsu are so weak that even if they have been keeping an eye on them for decades, there are no abnormal indicators at all. However, at this moment, a harsh prompt sounded from the monitor, and a dazzling red light flashed. Yajo immediately cheered up, because it is impossible to have someone watching in front of the monitor all the time. Therefore, the monitor has a threshold at the beginning of its design, and an alarm will be issued for events that exceed this threshold. You must know that the monitor has not issued such an alarm for a long time. When was the last time you came? It seems to be the Shinigami Hollow incident more than 100 years ago. It was a huge incident and involved several captains. He was a little curious, what could happen that would cause all the monitors to alarm this time? In a flash of thought, he had already clicked on Rukongai's radio wave image. Not only Yajo, but also other personnel from the Technology Development Bureau heard this unusual notification sound. What happened? Ah Jin looked surprised and leaned behind Yajo to watch the screen. People from other technology development bureaus also came closer and started talking. There hasn't been an alarm like this for decades, right? Is it the trace of Hollow that Rukongai has appeared again? Or is something else incredible happening? However, when they got closer, they saw something that surprised them. What's this? Powerful Reiatsu reaction detected in Rukongai 80 area. 20 weight. 10th grade. 5th class. 3rd class. Still rising. Reiatsu. The Reiatsu monitor has exploded. Yaojo looked solemn. Aizen, please inform the captain of this matter as soon as possible. No matter what happens in Rukongai District 80, this matter is not something you and I can solve. A quarter of an hour later, the first team arrived at the team building. Except for Jashiro Yukitaki, who was sick in bed, the other captains gathered. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni sat solemnly at the top of the table. Wearing the captain's haori, he revealed a mountain-like weight and majesty. There were 2 crossed scars on the top of his head. He narrowed his eyes slightly and held his hands casually in front of him. His whole posture gave people a strong sense of oppression. Is everyone here already? Except for the captain of the 13th Division who took sick leave, the rest are all here. Ichimaru Jin squinted his eyes and laughed. It's not healed yet, so I need to ask him to take more care. Hiraku Shunsui, who was wearing a pink printed coat, stood lazily and adjusted the hat on his head. Hey, why did the old man call us here? I have nothing to do and I have to go back to sleep. Kuretsuchi Mayuri, you can explain the situation to everyone now. Wearing a black and white mask, Kuretsuchi Mayuri said in a strange voice. Not long ago, an amazing Reiatsu suddenly appeared in the Rukongai 80 district. The strength of his Reiatsu has probably reached captain level, or even exceeded. I really want to see with my own eyes what it is. It would be great if we could study it carefully. After saying that, Kuretsuchi Mayuri laughed horribly. Zaraki Kenpachi clenched the sword in his hand and said crazily, it's really interesting. Could it be that there is some monster in Zaraki district? Then I must compete with him to see who is stronger. Old man, why don't you let me go and take a look? Chapter 3 A Godlike Man. You can't go. Why, old man, do you think I can't beat him? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni opened his eyes, giving people a strong sense of oppression, and said solemnly, this mission is not suitable for you. Hiraku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro, you two head to West Rukongai District 80 to see what's going on. If it's a friend, that's best. If they are enemies, they can be destroyed. Hiraku Shunsui smiled lightly and said, it seems that the time to sleep can only be postponed. Hitsugaya Toshiro had been listening to the conversation of the old men with his arms folded, until he nodded. The other captains must not relax, let's adjourn the meeting. After the meeting, Ichimaru Jin followed Aizen Sosuke out of the first team's team building, and the two of them walked in the quiet corridor. The orange-red sunlight reflected on the elegant and exquisite wooden corridor, and also covered the two people with a thin layer of golden gauze. Ichimaru Jin had doubts in his heart from just now. Was Aizen Sosuke responsible for this sudden change in Rukongai? If so, why don't you know anything about it? Could it be that Aizen Sosuke has begun to doubt himself? If it were anyone else, Ichimaru Jin believed that it would be impossible for him to be seen through. But he is Aizen Sosuke, a man who defies common sense. No, maybe he can no longer be called a human being. But a god who has surpassed humans. No amount of caution can be exaggerated. Aizen Sosuke suddenly stopped, which made Ichimaru Jin suddenly nervous and his breathing became a little short. Aizen Sosuke turned sideways, his black-rimmed glasses reflecting the setting sun, making it difficult to see his eyes clearly. Silver, what happened today makes me very happy. Rukongai has a genius. Ichimaru Jin lowered his head, his hair covering his eyes, who dares to call himself a genius, in front of Captain Aizen. Quote. Aizen Sosuke pushed up his glasses and said with a smile. No, Yin, I look forward to geniuses very much, because only this group of talents can bring changes to the decadent soul society. This is true for you, and it is true for those who have not yet met you. West Rukongai 80 District. Under the almost natural disaster-like Reiatsu training method, Su Chen's Reiatsu and spiritual power continued to improve. However, after reaching a certain level, Su Chen's Reiatsu improvement gradually slowed down. When he felt that Reiatsu had reached a certain bottleneck again, the number of souls that had to be devoured by each level of Reiatsu was almost hundreds or thousands of times higher than before. As the quality of the spirit sun too low. This means that the spiritual power of the surrounding spiritual beings is too low to meet Su Chen Reiatsu's need for improvement. Even if he swallows more, the improvement will be very limited. That's it for now. Su Chen slowly stopped the swallowing the sky and devouring the earth technique. Looking around, almost everything around him was crushed by that terrifying Reiatsu. The land in Rukongai District 80 seems to have been dug out, and it is in a state of disrepair. The clouds corresponding to the earth were also completely cleared, making Rukongai 80 area look like a clear sky for a while. The strong Reiatsu wave spread like an earthquake wave, causing the surrounding buildings to tremble. Many refugees were shocked to find that the water in the bowl was shaking. They rushed out of the house and looked at the sky. Did any natural disaster happen there? It's terrible, so destructive. Such a terrifying Reiatsu wave is like an earthquake. Su Chen punched forward, although it was a simple punch. But with the blessing of his ultimate Reiatsu, the air immediately exploded with a sonic boom. The atmosphere ejected like an air cannon, blasting a hole in the wall of the pit not far away. This Reiatsu should have reached the captain level. Su Chen's current Reiatsu has been greatly improved, but he has no reference or standards when practicing by himself, and he doesn't quite know what kind of state he is in. Su Chen, who was in the center of the giant pit, suddenly raised his eyebrows. It sensed that two powerful Reiatsu were approaching here at an extremely high speed. One of them has no distinguishing features. The other Reiatsu had a cold, ice-like aura. It seems that the movement here has alarmed the people in Seraiti. Su Chen thought about it. That's fine, my destination is none other than the Seraiti. I'll meet them first. Hiraku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro used Shunko to move forward quickly in the air, and it didn't take long to arrive at Rukongai District 80. Even standing in the sky, it is difficult to see the huge crater at the end. I am afraid that only Hadō above number 90 can have such power. The density of spirit particles in the atmosphere was surprisingly low, as if there was some amazing force that had emptied all the surrounding spirit particles. So much so that a relative nihility is formed, causing the surrounding atmosphere to converge crazily towards this place to fill the hole here, thus forming a huge storm. This power is really amazing. Hiraku Shunsui put away his usual lazy attitude and became a little serious. Hitsugaya Toshiro looked towards the center of the giant pit, already feeling the terrifying Reiatsu. Unlike my own cold Reiatsu, that guy's Reiatsu was deep and vast, as unfathomable as the stars in the universe. Come on, let's go down and take a look. The two used Shunko and disappeared. When they appeared again, they were already in front of Su Chen. Shunko is a skill used by Shinigami to move the body quickly. The people here are Hiraku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro. Su Chen thought to himself. Hiraku Shunsui is the captain of the Gotei 13 Division 8, and is a good friend of Jashiro Yukitaki, the captain of the 13th Division. The two have known each other since they trained together thousands of years ago. 2,000 years ago, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni founded Genji Shiga and served as the chief teacher. 1,000 years ago, a killer group, the Gotei 13, was created that holds the name of the Gotei and actually kills. During the same period, the name was changed to Spiritual Arts Academy. Hiraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitaki were the first batch of students to graduate from the Spiritual Arts Academy, and they were also Yamamoto's beloved disciples. Hitsugaya Toshiro is a genius child born in Rukongai who has possessed the powerful ice-type Reiatsu since he was a child. After Shiba Izshin, also known as Kurosaki Izshin, left Soul Society, he succeeded him as the captain of the 10th Division. It's such an honor to be able to meet two Gotei 13 captains at once. Su Chen said calmly. Chapter 4, 6 Rods Light Prison, Destruction Chant. Both Hiraku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro wore the most conspicuous Captain Haori, with the team numbers written on them. It was not surprising that the other party could tell at a glance that they were the captains of the Seraiti Division 13. Your Majesty, please be humble. It's hard not to alert us captains when there is such a big commotion in Rukongai. Hiraku Shunsui narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the other party solemnly. There is no doubt that the opponent's training method just now was to increase his Reiatsu strength by absorbing the spirit particles in the surrounding atmosphere. This method of using spirit particles in the atmosphere is obviously that of the Quincy. Shinigami's Reiatsu practice is endogenous, a practice that develops one's own potential. Therefore, Shinigami's limit is limited by the potential of his own soul. When the potential is developed to the limit, it will be difficult to break through the strength. Therefore, Shinigami has its limits, and to break through this limit, you need to explore high and low. Are you a Shinigami? Or a Quincy? Is it our friend, or is it a new storm? Su Chen smiled. What about Shinigami? What about Quincy? Whether it is using external spirits or developing one's own potential, it is just a means of cultivation, and the ultimate goal is to improve one's own strength. Hiroku Shunsui pressed the hat, is everything just to become stronger? As soon as he finished speaking, Hiroku Shunsui's figure disappeared from the place, leaving only an afterimage that slowly disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already standing in front of Su Chen. The Zanpakuto in Hiroku Shunsui's hand had already been unsheathed, and the snow-white sword struck at Su Chen. However, in Su Chen's eyes, everything is slowed down countless times. The flow of spiritual energy in the body when Hiroku Shunsui performs Shunpo, the angle and moment of the explosion. At the moment when he launched the attack, he squatted down, turned around, grasped the handle of the knife, and pulled it out with force. His eyes instantly changed from lazy to determined, staring closely at the target in front of him. Everything was clearly reflected in Su Chen's eyes. Shunpo, is this what it is? Su Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. Through the pace and spiritual power of Hiroku Shunsui, you can understand Shinigami's method of moving the body quickly and understand the technique, Shunpo. Close black lens bracket. Brush. The next moment, when Hiroku Shunsui's knife struck, it just passed through Su Chen's body. Afterimage. Hiroku Shunsui was startled. You must know that it took him a full month to learn Shunpo at the Spiritual Arts Academy, not to mention that Su Chen's Shunpo was able to reach such a level on the first use. Hiroku Shunsui was not only surprised that Su Chen could comprehend Shunpo so quickly. What's even more surprising is Su Chen's courage. Even Shinigami, who has practiced Shunpo to the highest level, dare not use it like this. At the critical moment, if there is a slight mistake, the person who was hit by the knife may not be the afterimage but the main body. Before Hiroku Shunsui could finish his thoughts, he, who had experienced many battles, turned around reflexively and blocked his face with his own sword. There was a clanging sound, like two giant bells colliding together, emitting an astonishing sound wave. Su Chen Shunpo walked behind Hiroku Shunsui and shook his hand casually. The spirit particles in the atmosphere gathered in his hand and formed a blue knife. Immediately after exerting force under his feet, his waist and abdomen drove the whole body's power to his arms, and he threw out the knife smoothly. Quick, this knife is too fast. Even the whole body of the knife has not been completed yet. With a blue spirit child holding the tail, it is gorgeous, and it cuts on Hiroku Shunsui's Zanpakuto with a knife, bursting out with a strong sense of power. Boom. When the spiritual power exploded, Hiroku Shunsui stepped back and his feet drew two long traces on the ground that had formed a huge pit. In the huge empty pit, three small dots stood in the center. Hiroku Shunsui looked at the man not far away, standing on the empty and desolate land, as if he was standing on the top of the world, leaving only loneliness. The knife in his hand was shining with blue spiritual light, and the atmosphere was full of energy. Spirits continued to gather on it. Before he could sigh, Su Chen's next blow was already coming towards him. The autumn wind rises with the falling leaf knife technique. One knife after another, in an endless stream. Not just fast, but like the wind, pervasive. As long as the opponent has the slightest flaw, the opponent will be completely frozen. Hiroku Shunsui had no time to breathe at all. This cannot continue. Hiroku Shunsui realized this and exploded his Reiatsu in an instant, like a balloon exploding, pushing away everything around him. Su Chen jumped up and stood in the air. After understanding Shinigami's Shunpo, it was natural for him to also understand the Quincy's flying scythe kick. You compared Shinigami and Quincy, combined with Quincy's ability to control atmospheric spiritual particles, and successfully understood flying sickle kick. Close black lens bracket. Speaking of which, this method of concentrating the soles under the feet for movement is smoother than Shunpo. What interesting things will happen if you combine flying sickle legs with Shunpo? Su Chen thought like this. The Bakudo in Hiroku Shunsui's hand had completely condensed. The thundering carriage, the gap of the spinning wheel, this thing has lights clustered and divided into 6. Bakudo number 61 inches 6 rods light prison. Quote. The 6 paths light sheets converged towards Su Chen and locked his movements. These light sheets emit a dazzling golden color. Hiroku Shunsui finally breathed a sigh of relief. What a monster. There are 6 sticks of light, so they must be able to restrain him. After Su Chen was locked tightly by the 6-stick light, not only did he not show any embarrassment, but he actually felt a little excited. Interesting, this is Shinigami's Bakudo. You watch Hiroku Shunsui use the 6-stand light prison, understand the Reiatsu composition of the 6-stand light prison, and successfully understand Bakudo's 61, 6-staff light prison. Close black lens bracket. You try to use Kido and understand the chant of destruction. Close black lens bracket. Bakudo number 61 inches 6 rods light prison. Quote. Hiroku Shunsui was not happy for long. The next moment, the 6 paths light sheet locked his body with the force of lightning. What's the situation? He actually understood Bakudo number 61 after just reading it once. And he also succeeded in breaking the chant. In actual combat, the enemy will not wait for Shinigami to finish chanting before attacking, so the chant of destruction appears. Kido can still be cast without the full chant, but the power will be much weaker. What surprised him even more, even horrified him, was what he saw next. Chapter 5 Absolute Submission. The Six Paths light sheet produced by the Six Wand light prison on Su Chen's body was actually broken down into the most basic spirit particles bit by bit. You try to unlock the Six Staff light prison on your body and realize the absolute affiliation of the spirit child. Close black lens bracket. Su Chen thought, and all the decomposed spirits gathered on his outstretched right hand. Not only that, but under his absolute subordination, the surrounding buildings began to decompose and turned into spirits that gathered on top of them. An unspeakable horror Reiatsu erupted from Su Chen's body. And Su Chen's form is also changing bit by bit. Those deep black pupils were dyed little by little with the blue that represented the spirit child. Dazzling, eye-catching, and hard to look at. Seeing this scene, Hiroku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro suddenly widened their eyes in horror. As Shinigami, they know very well what a terrible thing this means. Everything in Soul Society is made of souls. And this person was actually able to forcibly destroy and absorb the combination of these spirit suns. This is no longer the method of a Quincy in the general sense. Generally, Quincy's method is just to use the spirit particles in the atmosphere. And this man was actually able to destroy the fixed combination of spirit children and forcibly absorb them. This can be said to be the control of spirit children. As Hiroku Shunsui saw the ground beneath his feet being destroyed and turning into spirits gathering in Su Chen's hands, an almost absurd idea emerged in his mind. Could it be that I have always misunderstood before? He originally thought that the giant pit was destroyed by Su Chen's powerful Reiatsu. Now it seems that the other party is not only increasing the strength of his Reiatsu through the souls in the atmosphere, but also destroying the earth and the sky and incorporating them into his own Reiatsu. Hiroku Shunsui couldn't help but shed a drop of cold sweat on his forehead. This person is really too scary. Hiroku Shunsui explodes his own Reiatsu and breaks through the Six Staff light prison. Stop, 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 stop. Do not fight. Hiroku Shunsui shouted. If we continue to fight, it will be Bankai. Hiroku Shunsui originally wanted to test Su Chen's depth, but he didn't expect that Su Chen was so strong. The blue in Su Chen's pupils has not faded. In this state, his voice seemed to be tainted with a layer of ruthlessness and indifference. Oh, is this the only strength Seraites captain has? You probably still have Bankai that you haven't used yet. I'd really like to see it. Hiroku Shunsui smiled bitterly. Speaking of which, this discussion is actually Seraites' test of your excellency. Facts have proved that your ability is indeed extraordinary. The blue light in Su Chen's eyes gradually faded and turned into deep black again. Su Chen found that after obtaining the powerful Reiatsu, his mentality also changed. If it were the weak me before, maybe I would be very angry at Hiroku Shunsui's sudden attack. If I hadn't escaped, would I have died by Hiroku Shunsui's sword? But after gaining the understanding of Heaven-Defying, Su Chen's mentality also underwent some changes. I just feel that the tricks used by Hiroku Shunsui are really weak. It would be great if I could use Bankai to show myself, and see what the strength of the captain of the 8th team can give me. He shook his right hand and dispersed the spirit ball in his hand. With a bang, the spirit ball lost its restraint and turned into a strong wind blowing around. The hair and clothes of the 3 people were blown up by the wind. But what I still haven't gotten the answer to is, who are you? You can actually use the abilities of Quincy and Shinigami at the same time. Hiroku Shunsui shrugged, but there was a deep solemnity hidden under the seemingly lazy expression. It is impossible for others to believe that Su Chen is a time traveler, and they will only think that he is joking. My name is Su Chen, a commoner from Rukongai, but I'm just a little smart. A little bit stronger in understanding. Hiroku Shunsui's mouth twitched. Is this explained by having a little bit of understanding? You know, Su Chen is the first person to use the power of a Quincy in the form of a Shinigami. He is obviously a commoner in Rukongai, but he is able to understand the abilities of the Quincy. It is difficult for people not to doubt whether the blood of the Quincy is flowing in his body. However, if Su Chen was a Quincy, how could he use the power of Shinigami? Hiroku Shunsui saw clearly just now that Su Chen had not yet entered Seraiti and had not learned Bakudo's 61 Six-Staff Light Prison. He was able to break the chant just by watching himself use it once. This can definitely not be explained by having both Shinigami and Quincy bloodlines. In other words, did Su Chen realize the power of Shinigami and Quincy at the same time as a Rukongai civilian? This understanding is no longer strong. It's obviously 100 million points strong, right? Hiroku Shunsui felt like he was going to be depressed, so he shook his head and decided to do business first. My name is Hiroku Shunsui and this is Hitsugaya Toshiro. I wonder what your plans are for the future. Su Chen touched his chin. He had not seriously considered his future plans, but since he had come to Soul Society, Seraiti must go and have a look. By the way, find ways to improve your own strength. Seeing that Su Chen didn't speak, Hiroku Shunsui thought for a moment and said, if you haven't thought about it yet, why don't you come with me to see the captain? Any conditions can be easily discussed. Although Mr. Yamamoto is always called old man in front of him, he still has to give Mr. Yamamoto face in front of outsiders. The strong strength shown by Su Chen is enough for Gote 13 to recruit. Su Chen nodded. Let's go, I just want to see what Seraiti is like. Chapter 6 The Residual Fire Sword that can destroy Soul Society. Holding a thin sword full of chipped holes, Zaraki Kenpachi rushed out of Seraiti's west gate with a crazy smile on his face, making the ferocious scar that penetrated his face even more terrifying. There was also a cute little girl sitting on his back. Her big eyes were very shining, but the words she said with a smile were chilling. Aegean, who are you going to kill this time? That petite girl was the vice captain of the 11th Division, Kusaka Yakiru. Like me, he was born in Zaraki District. The team meeting just now was about him. I'm curious, how strong is he? As he spoke, Zaraki Kenpachi chose a direction and rushed out. Kusuka Yakiru quickly pulled Zaraki Kenpachi. No, it's in this direction. Zaraki Kenpachi pointed to the other side and said, it's obviously this direction. Kusuka Yakiru smiled and said, just run in both directions. Zaraki Kenpachi nodded, that makes sense. Not far ahead is Seraiti. Hiraku Shunsui said this when a huge wall extending to the end of the line of sight gradually appeared in the distance. However, if you want to enter Seraiti, you can't do it without restraining your own Reiatsu. For captain-level figures like us, if we cannot control our Reiatsu properly, we can easily cause unexpected damage. Maybe I just wanted to touch the wall, but the wall broke. Maybe it was just a normal step and the ground collapsed. So you have to learn how to control your Reiatsu in advance. If you don't know how, I can teach you. Su Chen shook his head. No need, I already know how to control my Reiatsu. If the powerful Reiatsu himself is not controlled, everything around him will be destroyed by his Reiatsu. Like a star with huge gravity, it tore apart all the surrounding buildings. Besides, after entering Seraiti, it is definitely impossible to maintain such a state, otherwise whatever he takes will be crushed into spirit seeds. I can't even sleep on the bed, so I can only sleep in the air with Shunpo. Su Chen doesn't want that. Then I learned how to control Reiatsu. You tried to control your own Reiatsu, and successfully controlled Reiatsu freely. Close black lens bracket. At this moment, Su Chen looked like an ordinary soldier of the 20th level of spiritual power. Hiraku Shunsui's words were stuck in his throat. You can be considered a genius of Soul Society, right? Why do you act like a mediocre person in front of Su Chen? Hiraku Shunsui doubted for the first time whether there was some misunderstanding in his understanding of genius. Hiraku Shunsui introduced. This is Seraiti's Zimin Hakudoman, and the guard here is the hero Godenbo who was born in Rukongai. Sai Danfang, open the door. Si Danfang looked at this scene with some surprise. What happened today? I saw so many captains at once. And didn't the captains of the 8th Division and the 10th Division just go out not long ago? Could it be that they were just trying to bring back that guy who looked like a Rukongai civilian? Who is this person that actually makes the captain be so polite to him? Although he had doubts in his heart, he was not qualified to ask more questions as he was, so he opened the door obediently. Hiraku Shunsui took the lead and led the way. Su Chen, don't worry. Captain Yamamoto is still very kind to people from Rukongai. If you have any conditions, just ask. Su Chen and Hitsugaya Toshiro followed. Si Danfang, who was holding Bai Daoman on his shoulders, watched the two people go away with a bunch of question marks on his face. What's the situation? A Rukongai civilian has just entered Seraiti and is going to see the captain. And you just put forward conditions casually. He has been guarding Bai Daoman for hundreds of years and nothing like this has ever happened. Even a genius like Ichimaru Jin didn't meet the captain for the first time when he entered Seraiti. You must know that the captain is the strongest Shinigami recognized by Soul Society. It was a great honor to meet him. What is so special about this civilian named Su Chen? The scene in Seraiti can be said to be completely different from that in Rukongai. The ground in Rukongai is a primitive dirt road with many gravels and potholes. But once you step into Seraiti, it feels completely different. It's like going from ancient times to modern times. The ground is covered with neat square stone tiles, paved to the end of sight, forming a huge network. These stone bricks are not ordinary stones, they are as smooth as mirrors and spotless. Neat, clean and dignified. This is the impression Seraiti gives. Head east from the west gate of Seraiti. Going south from here is where the Spiritual Arts Academy is. Hiraku Shunsui pointed in one direction. Su Chen looked along and saw a huge college located in that direction, standing out among the buildings. Is that the Spiritual Arts Academy? But what we are going to now is the first team's dormitory. It didn't take long for the three of them to reach their destination. There is a fragrance of chrysanthemums floating in the team building. Elegant and white. It gives people a feeling of health and longevity, elegant fragrance. When I opened the door to the first team building, I didn't see Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni in the conference room where everyone had gathered before. Hiraku Shunsui scratched his head. Yeah, it seems that the old man should be at his usual office. Let's go. Climbing up the stairs, you came to a huge door. The height of the door is far higher than that of ordinary people. After pushing it open, the sight in front of me suddenly became clear. It's like arriving at a huge observation deck. You can see the horizon all the way, and the entire Seraiti can be clearly seen. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni is sitting behind the desk on the right, with the team's emblem on the wall behind him. One table, one person, one emblem. One stroke, one piece of paper, one piece of ink. Apart from that, there is nothing else. At first glance, the dignified captain's office may not be too simple. At another glance, it was full of majestic atmosphere and vastness, like an overwhelming momentum coming towards the face. Because he is Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, he doesn't need any extra decoration. All you need is a flag and a piece of paper. Just have a place at the top overlooking all living beings. Under the setting sun, the place is dyed with a light golden color. Hieraku Shunsui waved his hand. Old man, we have brought you. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni slowly raised his head and looked at Su-Chen and others. Although he didn't make a move, Su-Chen still felt the fiery Reiatsu in the old man's body. From a normal perspective, the old man looks like an ordinary old man who enforces justice and loves Seraiti. But from Reiatsu's perspective, the old man is like a burning sun, making it impossible to look directly at him. Chapter 7 Existence Beyond Shinigami. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, already famous in Soul Society 2000 years ago. He once founded Yuan Lu, and became famous as the founder of Yuan Lu in Soul Society. He also recruited many disciples and founded Yuan Zishu. Created Gote 13 and served as the overall captain. A figure equivalent to the history of Soul Society, the strongest Shinigami in the history of Soul Society. Its Bankai residual fire sword can make the moisture in the entire Soul Society gradually disappear, and this is the result of control. If left unchecked, it can destroy Soul Society in a short period of time. For Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, the important thing is not how to explode power, but how to restrain power. Except for the slight physical weakness due to his old age, his skills of cutting, boxing, walking, ghost, etc. have all reached the pinnacle level. Facing the old man, Su-Chen held up his hands and said, Commoner Su-Chen, I have met Captain Yamamoto. Are you the one who caused that Reiatsu riot? Su-Chen smiled faintly and said in a neither humble nor arrogant tone, it's just some trivial skills, it cannot reach the level of elegance. The younger generation is awesome. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekoku stroked his beard and smiled, Su-Chen, if you are willing to be my close disciple, I will definitely teach you everything you have. Hieraku Shunsui nodded secretly. Yeah, the old man's vision is still as good as ever. Although the old man's words were a bit shocking, Su-Chen is fully qualified for this position given his qualifications. As long as Su-Chen agrees to become Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's disciple, he can immediately learn Seraiti's top skills and become a strong man in the shortest time. However, what surprised Hieraku Shunsui even more was Su-Chen's answer. Su-Chen cupped his hands and said, Thank you very much, Captain, for your kindness. I appreciate it. But as a commoner of Rukongai, I am used to freedom and I don't want to be anyone's disciple. Undoubtedly, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's conditions are very attractive. Once you agree, you can learn all the skills of Shinigami, and all of them are taught by Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Naturally, they are the best in slashing, boxing, walking, and ghost. But becoming a disciple of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni means that one has the responsibility to protect Soul Society and Seraiti. Su-Chen is not afraid, but protecting Seraiti is very troublesome no matter how you look at it. The most important thing is that Su-Chen already has Heaven-Defying understanding. Sooner or later, he will be able to reach the peak of each skill and surpass this peak. For others, being the captain's disciple may be a piece of cake in the sky. But for Su-Chen, it is dispensable. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni smiled and nodded, no problem, then Spiritual Arts Academy, would you like to go? It's all right. Su-Chen nodded. He had originally planned to join the Spiritual Arts Academy. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni picked up the brush and wrote a letter of recommendation. With your Reiatsu level, you don't need to take any more tests. With this letter of recommendation, you can join the Spiritual Arts Academy. Chojiro. After Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni finished speaking, a figure called Shunko appeared beside him. Chojiro Sasaki said, My subordinate is here. Go to the library and get some money and give it to Su-Chen. Yes, Captain. Chojiro Sasaki and Shunko disappeared in place. For the Spiritual Arts Academy, Hitsugaya, you can take Su-Chen there. Hitsugaya Toshiro nodded. After Hitsugaya Toshiro and Su-Chen walked out, only Kiyoraku Shunsui and Yamamoto were left on the empty observation deck. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni looked at Kiyoraku Shunsui and asked, Have you been in contact with Su-Chen? Kiyoraku Shunsui nodded. Well, he is very strong. Not only is he very strong in Reiatsu, but his understanding is terrifying to ultimate, even. You can even master some Quincy abilities. From this point of view, Su-Chen has surpassed Shinigami. Hearing this, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's squinted eyes widened a little, and a ray of light burst out from his cloudy eyes. Can you even have the ability of a Quincy? Hieraku Shunsui pondered for a moment, then said, If Su-Chen is allowed to grow, will Seraiti be in crisis? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni narrowed his eyes again and said calmly, "No problem, the Quincy has been exterminated. Even if Su Chen realizes the power of the Quincy, as long as I am still here, Seraiti will be fine." Quote. Hitsugaya Toshiro and Su Chen were walking in the corridor of the first team. The structure of the first team can be said to be square. After walking around for a few times, Su Chen really felt that everything looked the same. No wonder some people got lost. Soon the two walked out of the first team, and Chojiro Sasaki was already waiting for them at the door. "This is 60,000 rings. With this money, you should be able to spend it on Seraiti for a while. After you join Spiritual Arts Academy and become a student, you will receive a monthly subsidy, so it will not be a problem to maintain your daily life. If you achieve excellent results, you will receive additional rewards. I believe that with your talent, you will soon be famous in Soul Society." "Thank you." Su Chen took the banknote and looked at it, and found that on the front were some patterns representing nobles and the word 10,000, and on the back was a majestic palace suspended in the sky. It seems that this palace should refer to the spiritual palace. It expresses an attitude of nobles always protecting and supporting the royal family. It's just that there are very few people who are qualified to go to the Spirit King's palace, and even fewer people who can meet the Spirit King. At this moment, a clear and translucent voice suddenly came. "Ah, Captain, you are here." Then there was the sound of footsteps, and Su Chen turned around to look. The visitor has big wavy orange curly hair. Wearing a black death suit, the most eye-catching thing is the pair of huge plump breasts. The extremely exaggerated curves make people worry that they will fall off and dangle as she moves around. There is a necklace hanging around her neck, and the silver ring at the end of the chain falls on her chest. A pink shawl was draped over her shoulders, and the belt of her trousers was tied into a bow on the side. She has a plump figure and a flawless face. As expected of Shinigami, whose key word is beautiful, it is indeed endlessly charming. The person who came was none other than Matsumoto Rangaku, the vice captain of the 10th Division. After Matsumoto Rangaku saw Su Chen, his eyes suddenly lit up and he rushed over as if he had seen something good. Chapter 8 Matsumoto Rangaku, the Soul King's Fingertips. Matsumoto Rangaku's soft and warm hands held Su Chen's hands tightly. His eyes were shining brightly as he stared at the money in Su Chen's hand. "Wow, so much money. I have never seen 60,000 rings at once. By the way, who is he?" "His name is Su Chen, he is." Hitsugaya Toshiro paused, a commoner from Rukongai, going to the Spiritual Arts Academy. Matsumoto Rangaku blinked. "Captain, you see you have so many things to do every day, how can you have time to do such a small thing? Why don't you let me take him to the Spiritual Arts Academy? I happen to be familiar with the way there." Hitsugaya Toshiro crossed his arms and said angrily, "I think you want to take the opportunity to get away from work and drink while you're at it." "Ah ha 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 ha." Matsumoto Rangaku quickly took Su Chen's hand and ran away. How could it be? The captain must have thought wrong. When the words fell, Matsumoto Rangaku and Su Chen had disappeared from sight. Looking at the direction Matsumoto Rangaku left, Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help but shook his head. It's really reckless. Matsumoto Rangaku held Su Chen's hand and ran for who knows how long. The plump butt and sexy waist curved twist and turn during exercise, showing a different kind of temptation. After running for an unknown distance in one breath, Matsumoto Rangaku stopped, bent down, and held his knees with both hands. His chest heaved, and he gasped loudly, "I finally ran away." After calming down his breathing, he straightened up and glanced at Su Chen, finding that his eyes seemed to have been staring at her. He lowered his head following the other person's gaze, but couldn't see his toes at all. She couldn't help but smile slightly, stood up on her tiptoes and poked Su Chen's forehead. "You are a little kid but a big kid." After doing this action, Matsumoto Rangaku was surprised to realize that this action seemed a bit too close. "But I don't know why, but I always feel that it's very easy to get along with this little guy, as if the fatigue in my body is gradually fading away. Maybe it's because he's so good looking, and I don't know how many schoolmates he will charm when he gets to Spiritual Arts Academy." However, in Su Chen's eyes, he not only saw Matsumoto Rangaku's plump figure, but also stared at the missing part of Matsumoto Rangaku's soul. The fingertips of the spiritual king that were taken away. Interesting. Su Chen grabbed Matsumoto Rangaku's little hand, held her against the cold wall, and then quickly got close to Matsumoto Rangaku's face. Matsumoto Rangaku was startled. He kept backing up and hit the wall behind him. He had no way to retreat. He could only watch Su Chen's face magnified in front of him, so close that he could feel Su Chen's warm breathing. Su Chen blew lightly. "Miss Rangaku, am I too young? You'll know if you try it, right?" Matsumoto Rangaku felt his heart suddenly beating very fast, and his mind was in a mess, not knowing what he was thinking. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. "Did you get banged against the wall?" Then Su Chen let go of Matsumoto Rangaku's hand. Su Chen smiled lightly. "Are you Matsumoto Rangaku, the vice captain of the 10th Division? She is indeed a great beauty." Matsumoto Rangaku didn't expect that he would be molested by a child who was new to Seraiti. "It's really unbearable. I must let him know how great he is today." He bent his right elbow and lifted his golden hair along the curve of his ear. The long, silky hair was flying in the air, and a charming fragrance floated along the air. The little mouth is so sweet. It's getting late now. Even if you go to Spiritual Arts Academy, I'm afraid it won't be time to go through the admission procedures. If you don't mind, how about we go have a drink together and go to Spiritual Arts Academy tomorrow? Su Chen rolled her eyes. I think you just want to have a drink with me, right? Ah ha ha. Matsumoto Rangaku turned her head away and looked from the side. Her snow-white face was stained with a layer of red. Don't say that. Why are we so clearly separated when we drink together? Su Chen nodded. Okay. Today we will compete. Who gets drunk first? Matsumoto Rangaku is very confident that he can defeat Su Chen. He has never lost his drinking ability. As he spoke, Matsumoto Rangaku pulled Su Chen and walked towards a certain street. I'm telling you, you're definitely in for a treat this time. Recently, number 3 Izakaya on South Street has developed a new spirit called the smell of it, which is said to make you drunk just by smelling it. Quote. And it's in limited supply. How could I not try such a good wine? It's just that I've been a little nervous lately. Matsumoto Rangaku stretched out his thumb and index finger and rubbed them together, blushing a little embarrassedly, indicating that he was short of money. As they talked, the two came to a lively street. Su Chen looked at it quietly. The gap between Seraiti and Rukongai was really not small. Especially some shops on the street. The civilians of Rukongai do not feel hungry and do not need to eat because they can survive by just drinking water and breathing the spirit particles in the atmosphere. So there isn't much to eat in Rukongai. Even a sweet potato is a rare delicacy in Rukongai. People with psychic powers are different. They feel hungry and need to eat to replenish energy. Therefore, there are much more delicacies in Seraiti than in Rukongai. Just like in today's world, there are restaurants of all sizes along the way. The setting sun gradually set, and a hazy veil enveloped the earth. As if they had made an appointment, when the sky was getting dark, the lanterns on the street lit up with a warm yellow light one after another. When we arrived at the door of the izakaya, the lights here became even more brilliant, with colorful neon signs and semicircular covers embedded in the wall. Something was glowing inside the covers. Seeing Su Chen looking at these lights, Matsumoto Rangaku explained. This is a plant called firefly. It can absorb light during the day and emit light at night. Different types of firefly can emit different colors of light. There are many drunken men or women standing in front of the izakaya on the street in the evening, blowing the air. Although they haven't entered yet, they can already smell the strong aroma of wine. After seeing Matsumoto Rangaku, several Shinigami on patrol said hello. Hello, Vice Captain Matsumoto. The 10th Division was originally a patrol force, and these members were also very familiar with Matsumoto Rangaku. Matsumoto Rangaku nodded to them and took Su Chen into the izakaya. However, these Shinigami gathered together to discuss. Vice Captain Matsumoto actually brought a mysterious man to drink with him. And she held his hand very intimately. No way. Impossible. Captain Spring has arrived. Matsumoto Rangaku is also a famous flower among Seraiti. Especially the plump figure is the best of Seraiti, and few people can compare with it. According to common sense, Matsumoto Rangaku should find a boyfriend easily, but in fact he has been single for hundreds of years, just because his personality is really hard to describe, especially his hobby of drinking, and he doesn't look like a girl at all. Chapter 9, Spirit Control. The decoration in the izakaya does not look high-end and cold, but gives people a sense of elegance and refinement without losing the warmth and intimacy. A little bit of light mist floats in the air, mixed with the vague fragrance of wine, making everything look like a dream. Matsumoto Rangaku is already a regular customer. The waiter from the izakaya came up to him, pulled out 2 chairs with great discernment, wiped the seats with the towel on his shoulder. Vice Captain Matsumoto, what do you want to order this time? Matsumoto Rangaku's plump buttocks sat on the somewhat cold wooden chair. As the weight of his body pressed down, the contact area between the two expanded bit by bit. Then he raised his left leg and rested it on his right leg. His dangling toes swayed slightly comfortably. He tapped his finger on the table and said, take out the best wine you have here, and ask for the latest one, sniffer, drunk. Quote. Hey, Vice Captain Matsumoto, are you sure you want that drink? That wine is not cheap. Don't worry, I have money this time. After saying that, he realized something was not right, and immediately stretched out his hands, grabbed the clothes around Su Chen's waist, pulled Su Chen in front of him, and reached out from behind Su Chen. Half a brain said, no, he is rich. Su Chen casually took out 10,000 rings and slapped it on the table, just do as she said. Now that I have come to Seraiti, I naturally want to try the wine here. The waiter was shocked. He didn't expect such a generous move. He looked at Su Chen, then at Matsumoto Rangaku, and then showed an, I understand, expression, I understand. Soon, a jar of wine was put on the table, covered with sealing mud and tied with money. After opening, a strong aroma of wine wafted out. Matsumoto Rangaku first smelled the aroma of the wine, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Then he quickly hugged the cold wine jar and took a deep breath. Then he closed his eyes, held his breath, and let the aroma of the wine penetrate deep into his lungs. His face showed a look of intoxication. It is indeed a new creation of No. 3 Izakaya on South Street. It is truly extraordinary. Then he eagerly took out 2 bowls, placed one in front of Su Chen and the other in front of himself. He filled it first for Su Chen and then for himself. Come on, do it. Celebrating the first time we met today. It's also a celebration that we get to drink the best wine Seoul society has to offer. Matsumoto Rangaku raised the drink in his hand. Su Chen glanced at her and did not choose to toast with her, but stared at the wine in the glass. Look, smell, taste, taste. Su Chen picked up the wine bowl and took a sip. How is it? How does it taste? Matsumoto Rangaku watched Su Chen's throat with Adam's apple rolling and swallowed a sip of wine. Su Chen thought about it for a while. Although the food in Seraiti has developed very well, in Su Chen's eyes, it is still a bit inferior. It's just average, not strong enough. How come? I'll try it. Matsumoto Rangaku made a long sound on the word, way, exaggerating how it was possible. As soon as I picked up the wine bowl and took a sip, I felt a pungent and addictive taste deep into my throat. I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows, showing an overjoyed look, and started King. Perhaps because he drank too quickly, a wisp of transparent wine flowed down the corner of his mouth and slid across Shui's neck. Then there was a slight chill in his stomach, but Matsumoto Rangaku didn't care. After finishing the drink, he made a long and happy sound, put down the wine bowl, and said excitedly, "It's obviously very strong, okay." Su Chen looked at the wine in his hand. Under the colored lights, the bowl of transparent wine actually showed a brilliant color. After taking a shallow sip, you can feel a trace of spiritual power flowing into your stomach along with the wine, and then being digested bit by your body to replenish your own loss of spiritual power. In other words, the so-called wine is also made of spirit seeds. So, can my own spirit control the taste and concentration of wine? You tried to understand how to control the spirit sun, upgraded the method of turning gas into water, and successfully understood spirit control. Su Chen shook the wine in his hand. Under the illumination of the light, the wine gradually became flaming orange-red from the transparent color at the beginning, and then made a sound of explosion. The wine actually it burned. As this, spirit control. The so-called control of the spirit sun is different from the absolute subordination of the spirit sun. Absolute subordination refers to the ability to absolutely decompose all surrounding spirits for one's own use. The important, forced capture, and one's own use are essentially a type of power, but not refined enough. Spirit control is a more refined control that can change the taste and concentration of wine, etc. You can also create what you want by manipulating the spirit. As long as you understand the spiritual composition of something, you can create it. If absolute subordination is to decompose things that already exist, then spiritual domination is to create things that never existed. Spirit control is no longer the power of mortals, but touches the authority of gods. That is the realm of the Spirit King. Lingban left the palace. A tall and sturdy Shinigami with a Buddhist bead around his neck suddenly seemed to feel something. He looked towards the sky and saw that the Spirit King, who had not moved for a long time, seemed to have a momentary fluctuation just now. Is it my imagination? When Su Chen realized this, Matsumoto Rangaku had already drank several large bowls of wine. His originally cold cheeks gradually became hot, and his eyes became a little dizzy. It is indeed Seraiti's strongest wine, and it is indeed strong. Suddenly he heard something coming from Su Chen's side, and when he took a quick glance, he saw that the wine in Su Chen's hand was on fire inexplicably. Matsumoto Rangaku first thought that he had drank too much and was dazzled. Rubbing his eyes and taking a closer look, Su Chen found that the wine in Su Chen's hand had undergone incredible changes. What happened? Why did the wine catch fire? Su Chen put her elbows on the table and handed the wine bowl in front of Matsumoto Rangaku. Orange-red flames danced in Su Chen's dark black pupils and Matsumoto Rangaku's blue pupils. Su Chen smiled and said, "Do you dare to try it? Maybe you will get drunk after just one bowl." Matsumoto Rangaku glanced at it without fear at all and snorted, "What's so scary about it? Isn't it just bringing fire? My drinking capacity is one of the best in Seraiti. I can drink 10 of you." "Oh, then you can try it." Su Chen stretched out his right hand and made a gesture of invitation. Matsumoto Rangaku grabbed the wine bowl. After touching it, he felt the reality even more. The bowl in his hand was as hot as fire. I felt a little confused for a moment. But the water you threw out by what you said out loud cannot be taken back. Squeeze it tightly with your left hand, close your eyes, and press it hard into your mouth. Like a burning flame entering the throat. Re-enter the abdomen through the esophagus. It was like swallowing a knife, so spicy that Matsumoto Rangaku shed tears. It was as if his own heartbeat was burning along with the flame. A strong feeling of drunkenness and dizziness rushed into my mind. Matsumoto Rangaku couldn't help but cover his chest with one hand, opened his mouth, and fanned with the other hand. But in addition to the strong concentration, I also felt the fragrance of grains, as if I was in an endless wilderness of wheat fields. It lingered for a long time after drinking. The mellow and lingering taste is unmatched by other wines drunk by Matsumoto Rangaku. Of Chapter 10. There is no opponent ahead of us. After drinking, Matsumoto Rangaku was speechless for a long time. Chen was not in a hurry and silently poured himself another glass of wine. How do you feel? After waiting for a while, Chen asked, but still didn't get a reply. Then his shoulders sank, and a strong aroma of wine hit his face, and the side of his face felt itchy. When he turned around, he saw that it was Matsumoto Rangaku drunkenly lying on his shoulder, with his golden wavy hair scratching the side of Chen's face. Matsumoto Rangaku had a satisfied smile on his face, and his breath was filled with a strong smell of alcohol. He muttered inaudibly, "It's so delicious. I've never tasted so delicious." Chen couldn't help but shook his head. Matsumoto Rangaku is also an expert and bold person. A newborn calf is not afraid of tigers, and he actually drank it all in one gulp. You must know that Chen added a lot of strong alcohol spirit into the wine. Most people will faint after drinking even one fingertip. Matsumoto Rangaku is capable of holding on for so long. Chen waved to the waiter. The waiter immediately ran over with sharp eyes. The scene just now shocked him. They knew very well how drunk Vice Captain Matsumoto was. How could he get drunk after drinking all night in the past? Why did he fall down so quickly today? Get me a room. The surrounding Shinigami were also completely shocked. They saw Chen's wine with their own eyes. It ignited inexplicably in his hand, which was very scary. And it can actually make Matsumoto Rangaku drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk in just one cup. What kind of wine is this? Chen stood up, and Matsumoto Rangaku, who lost his support, collapsed on Chen's chair. Half of his white arms stretched out from his sleeves and rested on the chair where Chen had just sat. Feeling warm, he said in a delirious voice, "I'm not drunk. I can still drink 10 bowls. People who say they are not drunk are usually drunk, so take them to bed and rest." He reached out and pulled one of Matsumoto Rangaku's arms, wrapped it around his neck, put his big arm on his shoulder, and his forearm naturally hung down and was held by Chen's left hand at the wrist. His right hand went through Matsumoto Rangaku's back, held her armpits, and helped her move forward. As a result, I took just one step, and my right hand couldn't hold my armpit and slipped. Matsumoto Rangaku's body suddenly sank, and his side face was pressed against Chen's body. Fortunately, Matsumoto Rangaku's other hand was locked on Chen's shoulder, which prevented him from falling. "Really? What did you eat? The breasts are too big." Chen simply bent over, stretched out his hands, hugged Matsumoto Rangaku's amazingly curved waist, and lifted it up on his shoulders. The right forearm locked Matsumoto Rangaku's knee. In this way, Matsumoto Rangaku was like a piece of paper folded in half, with his legs in front of Chen and his head behind Chen, carrying her towards the room. Matsumoto Rangaku's long golden wavy hair hung down naturally, and he was mumbling something while giggling. Push open the door on the 3rd floor. A somewhat dark room with an open wooden window facing the door. Through the wooden window, you can see a silver moon hanging in the sky, spilling the silver moonlight into the room, creating the Tyndall effect. Chen walked to the bed and threw Matsumoto Rangaku on the bed. Matsumoto Rangaku hummed softly, and his plump body bounced a few times. He reached out to untie Matsumoto Rangaku's straw sandals, took off her white socks, covered her with a quilt, and pushed her exposed feet into the quilt. Just as he was about to leave, he was caught by Matsumoto Rangaku. "Chen, I can still drink. Help me up. Hee hee hee. It's a great day. I drank such delicious wine." Chen twitched hard, but she didn't pull her hand out. Instead, she was stuck in it and couldn't extricate herself. Hiss. Chen took a breath of air. As expected of Matsumoto Rangaku, he is well capitalized. Matsumoto Rangaku, who was full of alcohol, pouted and said coquettishly, "Don't move, brother Chen, sleep." As expected, he is prone to having sex after drinking, and is prone to doing rude things. Chen simply stopped struggling, turned her head, and looked at the sky quietly. Many tiny diamonds fell on the black velvet. The cool wind blew in my face, and there was an unreal feeling for a while. It seems that as long as you fall asleep, everything will be just a big dream when you wake up. However, the warmth of Matsumoto Rangaku's mountain clearly told him that everything was true. The 10th Squadron Executive Room. Even on a night like this, the lights are still bright. Hitsugaya Toshiro's pen flies in his hands. The files to be processed on the left-hand side gradually decrease from the thick stack at the beginning, and the processed files on the right-hand side gradually increase in height. As early as when he was the 3rd seat of the 10th Division, he basically handled all the affairs of the team, except for some matters that he had no authority to handle, which were left to the captain. The main reason is that Captain Shiba is always unable to find anyone, and Vice Captain Matsumoto Rangaku is unreliable. He knew without thinking that Matsumoto Rangaku must have taken Chen to drink, and maybe even got drunk and went crazy. Thinking of Chen, even Hitsugaya Toshiro, who had been concentrating on processing the documents, couldn't help but pause. Two scenes appeared in my mind. The scene is when Su Chen uses the absolute subordinate of Reiko, his eyes bloom with the deep blue light of the Quincy, the dazzling ultimate. Another scene is when Su Chen uses Kido, breaking and chanting the six-stand light prison. You must know that Shinigami and Quincy are opposite existences. Su Chen is able to possess the power of both at the same time. Is he really just an ordinary civilian? What changes will his arrival bring to Seraiti? Hitsugaya Toshiro took a breath, raised his head, and looked at the silver moon in the black sky through the window of the butler's office. Aizen Sosuke opened the door. Stepping into a room full of metal texture, there are many monitors in the room. There are many pictures playing on these monitors, and some data are moving slowly. Tusen Kanami has a hairstyle similar to dreadlocks and wears goggles before his eyes, proving that he is actually blind. Ichimaru Jin, whose eyes were squinted and as cold as a snake, stood beside Tusen Kanami and watched the situation on the screen. The most eye-catching thing is that in a container, within a hexagonal transparent frame, there is a gem emitting blue-violet light. It is an absolutely special kind of light. No matter who takes one look at it, it will be absolutely difficult for them to speak. Their attention will be completely taken away by this gem, and they will be unable to look away. The energy contained in that gem was so huge that it seemed to have the ability to change the world. There is no doubt that only Hogyoku has such amazing power. Legend has it that it allows Shinigami to break through its limits and evolve to the next level. Hogyoku can even absorb the hearts of things that exist around him and manifest them. How is the situation? Aizen Sosuke asked, his glasses reflecting Hogyoku's light. Ichimaru Jin turned his head and said, "Today, I dedicated several Shinigami souls to Hogyoku, but Hogyoku has never been satisfied." Aizen Sosuke nodded calmly, as if he had expected this situation. The sacrifice of Shinigami's soul can be stopped. Those souls are too weak. No matter how many sacrifices are made, there will be no more meaning. Tusen Kanami asked, "Then how do we complete Hogyoku?" Aizen Sosuke smiled and did not answer directly. Instead, he walked up to Hogyoku and reached out to hold the Hogyoku, which represented infinite possibilities. "Yin, please, everything is under our control." Chapter 11 Spiritual Arts Academy. Aizen Sosuke put away the Hogyoku. There is no need to test it anymore, so just keep it with you. How is Kyoraku Shunsui's investigation going? Ichimaru Jin narrowed his eyes and said, "We don't know much information at the moment. We only found out that his name is Su Chen, a commoner from Rukongai, and he will enroll in the Spiritual Arts Academy soon." Sure enough, it's not a treasure, but a person. Tusen Kanami said to himself, if we can let Su Chen join our team, our power will definitely increase. Ichimaru Jin lowered his head and said, "Can you join us and see for yourself how strong he is?" Tusen Kanami said, "Spiritual Arts Academy's soul burial internship has to face the virtual directly, which is a good opportunity for observation." Aizen Sosuke pushed up his glasses, and a blue light flashed on the lenses. "Su Chen, please pay attention next time you go to Spiritual Arts Academy to teach calligraphy and demonstrate Shikai." Among the woods, several men in black from the covert mobile team knelt in front of a girl in black. The girl looked to be only about 1.5 meters tall, very thin, with short forehead-length hair, and was wearing the captain's haori. "Captain, several more Shinigami have disappeared for no reason. This is the 372nd case of missing Shinigami. But no deeper clues have been found." "I understand, you go down first." "Yes, those men in black disappeared one by one." Sui Feng sighed. "This is just the data found on the surface. If we add more people whose names have not even been found, as well as those civilians in Rukongai who are not even known to be missing, I don't know how many people have disappeared." Sui Feng couldn't help but look at the sky in trance, thinking of that elegant and noble figure. What would you do if you were the one facing this situation? Then, she couldn't help but clenched her fists and bit her lip. Sui Feng clenched his fists. She still couldn't let go of Yoruichi leaving without saying goodbye. Matsumoto Rangaku felt that his chest was tight and his breathing was not smooth. "I couldn't help but feel distressed. Could it be that my breasts have grown bigger again? It's so big that even when I lie down to sleep, I have trouble breathing. What a headache." Warm sunlight shines through the window on the quilt, coating everything in the room with a layer of gold. Matsumoto Rangaku opened his eyes and found Su Chen lying on his chest. This made her sigh in relief. Startled her. "Fortunately, my breasts haven't gotten bigger, it's just that someone slept on them." "It's not right. Shouldn't you care about why someone is sleeping on your breasts?" Then the drunken memories flooded into his mind, and Matsumoto Rangaku couldn't help but cover his face. "Unexpectedly, I actually held Su Chen's hand and refused to let go, and even acted coquettishly towards Su Chen. Is that really you? You must know that Matsumoto Rangaku is someone who no one dares to offend in the 10th division. It can even be said to have a bad reputation. If other people saw Matsumoto Rangaku's coquettish tone, their eyes would probably pop out." Matsumoto Rangaku felt that he had no face to face Su Chen again. Tired. Destroy it. But, looking carefully, Su Chen's eyebrows are indeed very beautiful. Thinking of this, Matsumoto Rangaku unexpectedly wanted to reach out and touch Su Chen's head. However, at this moment, Su Chen opened her eyes and stared at her with a pair of dark eyes. Matsumoto Rangaku retracted his hand in embarrassment. Ah, well, you're awake. I was going to wake you up. Su Chen stood up and stretched. It had to be said that this woman's breasts were quite soft and warm. They were quite comfortable as pillows and allowed him to have a good sleep. Boom boom. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Matsumoto Rangaku straightened his messy clothes and said, "Come in." The waiter came in with a wooden basin and towel. "Hot water, please use it slowly." After saying that, he exited. After he exited, what Matsumoto Rangaku never expected was that there were actually several Shinigami from the 10th Division gathered at the door to ask about the waiter. How is it going? Does Vice Captain Matsumoto have that kind of relationship with that boy? It must be, we all spent the night together, can we not? The waiter sneered and rubbed his head a little naively. As a service staff, it's better not to worry too much, I don't know anything, so don't ask me. Matsumoto Rangaku opened the quilt and stood up, only to find that his shoes and socks had been taken off and put aside. Matsumoto Rangaku's face felt inexplicably hot when he thought of this. Are you being taken care of by brother Su Chen? She looked at Su Chen and saw that Su Chen was washing his face. She couldn't see her expression clearly or what she was thinking. Put on your shoes and socks and walk to the basin. Holding the towel used by Su Chen, Matsumoto Rangaku put the warm towel on his face. Although there was no special smell, it felt a little itchy mentally. Yesterday. Matsumoto Rangaku hesitated for a moment, then said, "What happened yesterday was my fault. I actually did something like that. I didn't expect that I would get drunk after just one drink yesterday, and I would not let go of Su Chen. It was really embarrassing." Matsumoto Rangaku wanted to cover his face and squat in the corner. "It's okay. But are you sure you don't care about the people outside?" Su Chen shrugged towards the door. Matsumoto Rangaku tilted his head with a blank expression, huh. At this moment, the Shinigami of Division 10 who heard these conversations outside all had anti-smiles on their faces. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that it was Vice Captain Matsumoto who took the initiative. Hiss. Now that Vice Captain Matsumoto has started spring, will someone be our eldest brother-in-law? It's best to take care of Vice Captain Matsumoto. While several people were chatting, the door was pushed open unexpectedly. Bang bang. Matsumoto Rangaku punched one of those Shinigami in the head. Sister, we know we were wrong. The soldiers of the 10th Division stood in line and bowed to apologize. Matsumoto Rangaku smiled and said, "If you dare to let me know that you are talking nonsense, you will be dead." Although he was smiling, the members of the 10th Division all felt a chill rising from their backs. Absolutely not. Let's go. Matsumoto Rangaku took Su Chen and left. At this time, there is a faint morning mist in Seraiti, and you can still see shops selling breakfast on the street. The smell of steamed buns and white fireworks are emitting from the shops. The Shinigami hurriedly bought breakfast and went to carry out their respective tasks. The two of them attracted a lot of attention while walking on the road. Many people know Matsumoto Rangaku, but this is the first time for Su Chen to meet him. This is the Spiritual Arts Academy. Matsumoto Rangaku said after arriving at the square of Spiritual Arts Academy. Returning to Spiritual Arts Academy, Matsumoto Rangaku is still filled with emotion. I think I also graduated from here and then grew up step by step to become the current vice captain. This is where most Shinigami's lives begin. Chapter 12 Beautiful Girl Shinigami. From the outside, Spiritual Arts Academy is a very impressive building. There are various areas divided inside. There are Kido rooms, Kendo rooms, etc. The square at the entrance of Spiritual Arts Academy is unimaginably large, enough to accommodate thousands of people standing here at the same time without feeling crowded at all. There is a plaque at the entrance of the academy with the words, Spiritual Arts Academy, written in large characters. The handwriting is vigorous and strong, penetrating the wooden back, giving people a feeling of majesty like a lion and as thick as a mountain. It should be Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni written by. When you walk into the Spiritual Arts Academy, you will see buildings lined with buildings. There are some chairs for people to rest on both sides of the road. Many students wearing white Mao school uniforms walk under the trees. In an executive room, Kuranosuke Kyoda, the teacher in charge of the elite group of Spiritual Arts Academy, was processing documents. There were several teachers nearby who had no classes for the time being. At this moment, two footsteps were heard, coming from far away. Kuranosuke Kyoda looked up and saw that it was Matsumoto Rangaku, the deputy captain of the 10th Division. Matsumoto, why are you free to come to the academy today? Matsumoto Rangaku put his hands on Su Chen's shoulders and stood behind Su Chen. The protagonist today is not me, but him. Su Chen took out a letter. Kyoda Kuranosuke was a little confused. Whose letter was it? After taking it, I saw that the envelope had the chrysanthemum mark of the 1st Division. Kyoda Kuranosuke looked serious. Letters from the first team were rare. Now there is Su Chen, a Rukongai commoner, who is extremely talented. Close black lens bracket. We will arrange for him to enter the Spiritual Arts Academy without taking the test. Close black lens bracket. After reading it, I couldn't help but look at Su Chen a few times. What is so special about a person that can be recommended by the captain? I understand. Since it was recommended by the captain, there is no need for the Reiatsu test. Matsumoto Rangaku naturally understood why Kuranosuke Kyoto showed such a surprised look. The assessment of the Spiritual Arts Academy is very strict. Shinigami who graduate from the Spiritual Arts Academy will face the battle of life and death, rather than a general house-playing academy. Therefore, few people can enter without taking the test, unless their Reiatsu is so strong that no test is needed. Matsumoto Rangaku suddenly woke up. In the room just now, Chen could sense Reiatsu outside the door while standing inside the door, but he didn't notice anything. Although you don't need to use your eyes to see Shinigami's Reiatsu, there is no difference even through the door. But the premise is that the opponent releases his own Reiatsu. If it is kept within the body, then this Reiatsu will be difficult to detect. In other words, is Chen's Reiatsu perception stronger than that of his vice captain? Matsumoto Rangaku looked at Chen's back and was secretly shocked. Kuranosuke Kyoto opened the drawer, and there were many tokens in the drawer. The top was a triangle, and the bottom was a rectangular wooden sign. The spiritual power is stored in the fingertips, carving pictures on the wooden sign. This is your student ID card. Chen took it and took a look. The front of the wooden sign was engraved with Chen and the elite group. The back of the wooden sign also had miniature engravings from the Spiritual Arts Academy. There are several sets of Mao school uniforms in various sizes. You can choose one that suits you. Before Chen had time to pick, Matsumoto Rangaku couldn't wait to pick it. There is a wooden box in the corner, which contains various models of Mao's school uniforms. Boys are blue and white, girls are red and white. There is also the Spiritual Arts Academy badge on the chest of the school uniform. Matsumoto Rangaku picked up a set and pointed it at Chen's body, shaking his head. No, this set is too small. This set is too small. Chen should ask for something bigger. This one should be fine. It looks like your figure is more suitable for Chen. Let's try it on quickly. It seems that Matsumoto Rangaku is more concerned about what he looks like after changing clothes than Chen. He pulled Chen all the way to the bathroom and pushed Chen inside. After a while, Chen changed her clothes and came out. After Matsumoto Rangaku watched Chen come out of the locker room, his peach blossom eyes couldn't help but widen. Chen is always very good looking, but she was wearing a Rukongai hemp shirt before, and now she is wearing a decent pure white genuine uniform, and she really looks like a Prince Charming walking out of a painting. Moreover, Chen not only has a good-looking face, but more importantly, his figure. It can be said that he is an extraordinary person at first glance. Then he discovered that there was a wrinkle in Chen's collar that had not been smoothed out, and he subconsciously stretched out a pair of bare hands to smooth it out for Chen. So lovely. Matsumoto Rangaku looked left and right and felt that Chen was perfect. It wasn't until she realized that Chen had been staring at her that she suddenly asked, "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Chen reminded. "Aren't you the vice captain of the 10th division? You won't be free enough to attend class with me, right?" Matsumoto Rangaku said with a smile. "Don't tell me, it's really possible. I can be a teacher. I can teach you whatever you don't know about cutting, boxing, walking, and ghosts. I won't hide anything." "Well, I'm joking, but if I have time, I will really come to the academy to play with you." Bye. Matsumoto Rangaku put his palm against his charming red lips, then closed only one eye and blew Chen a kiss. He was indeed Matsumoto Rangaku. After Matsumoto Rangaku left, Chen walked around the academy alone. The area of Spiritual Arts Academy is much larger than imagined. Not only does the academy have various buildings, but there are also patches of secluded woods. By chance, I felt a different kind of Reiatsu. Out of curiosity, Chen walked over and took a look. I saw the words, Hadō Classroom, written on the plaque at the door. Chen pushed open the door and entered. What you see are two distinct places. One is a rectangular wooden floor extending from Chen's feet. It was polished and shiny, and a group of students knelt on the wooden floor. There are 4 painted red columns at the 4 corners of the rectangular floor, and above the columns is a roof with forward-sloping eaves. Beyond the floor and roof was a barren sandy field that looked like it had been damaged by Kido many times. There were many targets marked with red hearts placed 100 meters away. At this time a petite girl Shinigami. Although it's hard to say whether Shinigami can be considered a girl at her age. Wearing a dead bully outfit, he has short, shoulder-length hair. The legs are slightly apart, shoulder-width apart, the right hand is stretched forward, the left hand grasps the forearm of the right hand, and he is staring at the target in front of him attentively. Although she only saw her back, Chen still felt that her body was full of seriousness and delicacy. Chen didn't say anything, just stood quietly behind everyone and watched. I saw the girl chanting in her mouth, "O King. Masks of flesh and blood, all things, flying high, things with the name of human beings. Heat and strife, rolling southward across the sea, marching forward." Following her crisp voice, a hot red fireball gradually condensed in front of the palm of her outstretched right hand. The surrounding wind also converged towards the fireball, and the huge energy made the fireball restless and beat continuously. Hadō's 31 red cannon. The fireball flew out and accurately hit the bullseye hundreds of meters away, shattering it. The girl turned around and smiled sweetly. This is the chanting formula for Hadō's 31 red fire cannon. Do you all remember it? Remember, Kuchiki-sensei. Yes, it is Rukia Kuchiki of Division 13 who was teaching at Spiritual Arts Academy at this time. Chapter 13, Hadō 31 Red Cannon. There are two types of teachers at Spiritual Arts Academy. One is the resident teacher, whose task is to teach students various Shinigami techniques. This kind of teacher usually teaches step by step, starting with Hadō no 1. One is a part-time teacher like Rukia Kuchiki. She usually has her own job in the team and only comes to teach at Spiritual Arts Academy when she is free. The teaching is generally more advanced. Rukia Kuchiki looked at these students and couldn't help but feel a little proud. Once upon a time, she was also a member of the academy, and at that time she had already shown extraordinary Kido talent. Now she is not only able to control the abandoned chant and the dual chant with ease, but she has also mastered the advanced Kido, which is over 60. Although he is only a member of the 13th division, he is fully qualified to teach Kido classes. But what makes her a little sad is that, just like 100 years ago, the line between nobles and commoners is still as clear as water and fire. The students in front of me seemed to be in class together, but in fact they were divided into two groups. On one side were the nobles sitting together, and on the other side were the common people of Rukongai. With so many people looking at her, she suddenly remembered her situation 100 years ago. She was originally a commoner from Rukongai, but she was lucky enough to be admitted into the Kuchiki family. She was lucky enough to get the word Kuchiki, and became an alien in the eyes of ordinary people. Friends who used to treat her sincerely became polite, for fear of offending her somewhere. The title also changed. Miss Kuchiki already made him understand. A thick barrier has appeared between them. Rukia Kuchiki feels deeply lonely in her heart. Can she also have true friends? The civilians were still very respectful and submissive when asking questions to themselves, for fear of not doing something right. Rukia Kuchiki seemed to be used to this scene and answered their doubts with a smile. After the answers were completed, all the students entered the stage of practicing Kido, chanting the words. Those who can successfully perform it are all nobles. They have received guidance from the seniors in the family before entering school, which is the elite education of the nobles. For civilians who have just entered school, Hadō number 31 is still too difficult. After being free for a while, Rukia Kuchiki walked behind everyone and came to Chen's side. As early as after performing Kido, Rukia Kuchiki saw a strange person. He was obviously wearing the school uniform of Spiritual Arts Academy, but he was alone with his hands crossed and his chest, leaning against the wall of the Kido room, looking lazily. She cast Kido. Rukia Kuchiki made a fist with her right hand, put it in front of her mouth, coughed twice, and cleared her throat. This classmate, aren't you going to study with everyone? Although you are late, you must have seen the process of me performing Kido just now, so let's practice quickly. If you don't practice well, it will be too late to regret it when you face the hollow after graduation. After Rukia Kuchiki finished speaking, she found that Chen had been staring at her face in trance, not listening to her at all. This made Rukia Kuchiki's heart skip a beat. Why is the other person staring at me like this? Is there something on my face? Moreover, judging from the clothes the other party is wearing, he looks like a civilian, right? If you are a noble, you will have some jewelry that looks ordinary but is actually valuable. People like Chen who are clean are basically commoners. After hundreds of years, finally a commoner dared to look directly at her like this. Although it was a bit offensive, Rukia Kuchiki was actually a little happy in her heart. Maybe I can become friends with him. My heart skipped a beat as I had such an incredible thought. Friends, true friends, these words are really too far away for me. Rukia Kuchiki frowned and said seriously, this classmate, did you listen to me? It's just that Rukia Kuchiki's height is too short in front of Chen, and even if she tries to make a serious expression, she doesn't feel majestic. Chen lowered his head and looked directly into Rukia Kuchiki's eyes, and asked, are you Rukia Kuchiki? Rukia Kuchiki was stunned. What, do you know me? I don't know, and I don't call this classmate, my name is Chen. No matter what happened to you, in short, practice Kido now. If your grades are not up to standard, don't blame me for slapping you. I am a very strict teacher. Rukia Kuchiki made a fierce expression. Chen spread his hands, looking like he couldn't get enough energy. Kido number 31 is too easy. There is no difficulty at all, I understood it at a glance. You watched Rukia Kuchiki perform Hadō's 31 red cannon and successfully understood it. Close black lens bracket. Really? Rukia Kuchiki put her hands on her hips and looked in disbelief. Even with her Kido talent, she couldn't have understood it so quickly. You must know that today is the first time for a first grader to attend Kido class, and the one who comes up is the intermediate Hadō number 31. I don't know how much more difficult it is than Hadō no 1. The reason why the red fire cannon is shown in the first class is because the red fire cannon is the Hadō that first graders take the exam at the end of the year. Whether it is qualified and excellent is evaluated based on whether it can be successfully performed and the power exerted. In other words, the original plan was to give the students 1 year to practice the number 31 Hadō Red Cannon. How could anyone possibly learn it just by looking at it? Chen shrugged and said lazily, if you don't believe it, don't believe it. After saying that, he actually walked outside. Rukia Kuchiki was stunned. This guy actually ignored me. Maybe his intuition was not wrong, he was really a different person. You continue to practice, the teacher will catch a nasty guy who skipped class. Rukia Kuchiki rushed towards Chen. Sora Hirano is a member of the lower-level noble Hirano family. The Hirano family was originally a mid-level noble, but its descendants gradually declined and could only be reduced to a lower-level noble. However, even so, they are still nobles and can receive elite education before enrolling in the Spiritual Arts Academy. I have been practicing for several years now and have reached the point where I can perform intermediate Kido. Now that he has learned the red artillery, Hirano Kongjin has nothing to do. He looks around and squints his eyes when he passes by the poor civilians, with disdainful contempt flashing deep in his eyes. When he saw Rukia Kuchiki, his eyes became respectful again. Those commoners didn't know, but as a noble, how could he not know the value of the word, Kuchiki? That was the Kuchiki family, one of the 4 great nobles. The current head of the family, Byakuya Kuchiki, is known as the strongest head of the Kuchiki family in history. Chapter 14 Rukia's Heart. Seeing Rukia Kuchiki walking back, Hirano followed her with all his eyes and found a figure lazily leaning against the wall. The guy seemed to say his name was Chen. With a strange name, he does not belong to the nobility at first sight. Since he was a civilian, Hirano Sora had no interest in him, but he didn't expect that civilian to speak so boldly that the Hadō Red Cannon on the 31st was too simple. Hirano Kongjin clenched his fists. Those who despise Hadō's 31 Red Cannon are despising his efforts over the past few years, and they are despising the elite education of the nobility. Let Pingye Kongjin feel very unhappy. He snorted coldly, wanting to see how a mere commoner could perform an intermediate Kido. As a result, the other party didn't dare to use it at all and ran away all of a sudden. This made Hirano Kongjin even more convinced that the other party was just talking nonsense. Rukia Kuchiki ran out. In the vast sea of people, Chen's figure was so obvious that it seemed that everyone else had turned into white, and only he turned into black, attracting all his attention, so he ran to catch up. He reached out and grabbed Chen's wrist. Hey, can you tell me about you? Aren't you here to catch me and go back to class? Rukia Kuchiki smiled and said in a clear voice. Of course, it is also my task to take you back to class, but I want to get to know you and get to know you more. Also, it's wrong for you to talk big words like this. You have to work hard even if you haven't learned the red fire cannon yet. If you don't practice seriously, you will lose your life when you really face the hollow in the future. I've learned. I do not believe. I'll try it for you. The two of them arrived at a deserted forest. Hadō's 31, red fire cannon. Chen's eyes narrowed slightly, and he stretched out his left hand as he finished speaking. A red fireball with a diameter of 1 meter condensed in front of Chen's hand. Then it flew out and burned a big tree into pitch black charred wood. After the flames were extinguished, sparks and thick white smoke were still left on the big tree. How about it? Chen did not use his full strength to perform this Kido. Just use a squad member's normal Reiatsu to cast it. After all, the power of his captain-level Reiatsu and even the intermediate-level Kido is enough to destroy the forest in front of him. Rukia Kuchiki's eyes widened and she said in disbelief, how is that possible? How can you possibly learn Kido above size 30 at just one look? Even Ichimaru Jin, who was said to be a genius, couldn't do it back then, right? Have you studied Kido before enrolling? Chen thought for a moment and realized that he had actually used the 6-wand light prison before entering school. Although he only learned it after watching Kyoraku Shunsui use it once, well, if you say so, it can be considered as being exposed to it. Humph. Rukia Kuchiki suddenly showed a somewhat proud smile. Did I guess it? By the way, can you tell me your origins? I am a commoner from Rukongai. Which district is it from? District 80 Zaraki District. Rukia Kuchiki fell silent and stopped. Living in District 78 was already very difficult for her, and she lived like a wild dog every day. She could not imagine what kind of hell District 80 would be, and what kind of tenacity it would take to survive there. Chen looked back at Rukia Kuchiki and asked, what's wrong with you? Rukia Kuchiki smiled and said, nothing, let me tell you about myself. While lowering his head and looking at his toes, he spoke as if talking to himself, regardless of whether Chen was listening or not. I was born in Inazuri District, District 78. Although I have an older sister, my impression of her is vague. I can't even tell whether I really have a sister or whether this sister is just my lonely imagination. Rukia Kuchiki spoke quietly while Chen listened quietly. Time passed by minute by minute. Rukia Kuchiki wiped her tears and said, I'm sorry, as a teacher, it's embarrassing to say this to a student. Chen said nothing. Su Chen knew all these things about Rukia Kuchiki, but he was still very touched when he heard her speaking to him word by word in her soft voice. Rukia Kuchiki smiled and said, "Just think I'm talking nonsense." However, at this moment, Su Chen pressed his shoulder with his hand and leaned his back against the cold, rough wall. Su Chen's beautiful face was right in front of her, getting closer and closer. Close enough to see myself reflected in his pupils. What is he going to do? I am your teacher. Then a black shadow enlarged in front of her eyes, causing her to close her eyes, her eyelashes trembling. Su Chen hit Rukia Kuchiki's forehead hard with her knuckles, idiot. After knocking, Su Chen let go of Rukia Kuchiki and walked forward. Rukia Kuchiki opened her eyes and looked at Su Chen's back. For a moment, she felt like she saw her brother, so determined and never confused. I touched the skin on my forehead, and the pain that still remained there was extremely real. I was indeed a fool to feel sorry for myself and be moved there. The corners of Rukia Kuchiki's lips slowly raised into a smile, and she trotted to keep up with Su Chen. Don't you have to go back to class? I'm afraid get out of class is over when I go back now, and everything that needs to be taught has been taught. Next, it's time for free practice. And please call me Rukia. But don't tell me, when I was with Su Chen, I had a very natural feeling. It seemed that the quality of the spirits around me was higher. It must be my own illusion. You know, there is Captain Unohana's class today. The one who teaches Kaido is in Kaido's classroom, not far in front. Kaido, let's go and have a look. The two of them walked all the way to Kaido's classroom. Not to mention that this classroom is much larger than an ordinary classroom. It looks very impressive. People were pouring in continuously. You haven't seen Captain Unohana yet, right? Let me tell you, Captain Unohana is very gentle. Chapter 15 Flower of Mao. Among the people entering the classroom were not only Su Chen and Rukia Kuchiki, but also many other Spiritual Arts Academy students. Hirano Sarajan and others who were taught by Rukia Kuchiki just now are also included in this list. When they saw Su Chen and Rukia Kuchiki, the first-year elite middle school students came over to say hello. Kuchiki-sensei. Some civilian girls gathered around Su Chen. What is the name of this classmate? Su Chen. My name is Makami Wesui, said a girl wearing black-rimmed glasses and long bangs. Hello, my name is Yinhua Keomu. My name is Kyori Ryoka. Makami Waishui straightened his hands, stood up slightly on tiptoes, and blushed a little shyly. Su Chen, it's wrong for you to skip class like this. Come to class with us in the future, okay? Su Chen nodded noncommittally and dealt with it casually. Rukia Kuchiki stood aside and was very happy watching Su Chen chatting with several girls around her. After telling Su Chen about her experience, she felt as if she was already very familiar with him, even though they had only known each other for a short time. Sora Hirano also came over to say hello. I've met Mr. Kuchiki. Rukia Kuchiki nodded calmly. Everyone entered Kaido's classroom one after another. Although it is a Kaido classroom, it does not look like a classroom, but like a medical office or a laboratory. The smell of disinfectant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, lingered in the air, reminding me of the environment of a medical rescue team. Rows of seats were spread out, and a transparent box was placed on each seat. Inside the box was an injured white mouse. In front of the many seats was a large podium, and on the podium was an injured white mouse. Some of these have broken limbs, some have broken tails. It is obvious that the injuries of these mice are different. Most of the injuries given to the students are minor injuries such as broken tails, which are not life-threatening. This time, because Rukia Kuchiki was not a teacher, she was also watching Captain Unohana's lecture as a student, so she did not stand on the podium. Instead, he came to the back seat with Su Chen and sat next to Su Chen. Rukia Kuchiki folded her hands on the table, and put her two slender legs together without any gaps. Although she raised her head and raised her chest, her scale was completely the same as that of Matsumoto Rangaku. Seeing Su Chen sitting casually and lazily, he stretched out his feet wearing white socks and kicked Su Chen's feet. Listen carefully to the class. Yes, Teacher Rukia. Su Chen responded and straightened up. Jingle bell. Soon after, the school bell rang. After the bell ended, under everyone's attention, a gentlewoman wearing a pure white captain's haori walked in. A 4 was embroidered on the haori on the back to indicate that she was the captain of the 4th division. The long black hair was combed into 2 braids from the back of the head to the front of the neck, intertwined and falling along the proud curves. Rukia Kuchiki looked down at her chest and couldn't help showing a look of sadness. Su Chen noticed that there was an assistant following Unohana Retsu. The assistant was tall and thin, with short, sleek white hair, and 2 red ropes hanging from her earlobes. There are 4 braids fixed with golden balls on the back of her head, which sway as she moves. She is clearly a girl, but looks like a boy. She is none other than Katetsu Aizen, the vice captain of the 4th division. Unohana Retsu stood in front of the podium and said in a gentle voice, "These are some experimental mice taken from Captain Nirvana of the 12th division to give us Kaido exercises next." Some information about Unohana Retsu flashed in Su Chen's mind. Thousands of years ago, she was still a ruthless killer and an unprecedented villain in the history of Soul Society, who only pursued the most powerful swordsmanship. Because he claims to have mastered all the swordsmanship in the world, he calls himself Unohana Hachizenryu. Who would have thought that the great evil man from thousands of years ago is now teaching others Kaido? The so-called Kaido is essentially the repair of the spirit body, which requires extremely fine Reiatsu control. While explaining Kaido, Unohana Retsu demonstrated. Every white mouse at the scene has a number printed in red. That on the podium is just the number 1. It was seriously injured, and it was unknown what contribution it had made to the scientific research of the 12th Division. There was a deep wound on its back, and it was already in a dying state. Unohana Retsu's hands are stretched forward, and Reiatsu is condensed in his hands, emitting a warm and soft green light. The green light gradually extended and formed an oval-shaped cover, enveloping the white mouse. A magical scene happened. Granulation grew in the wound on the mouse, and it actually healed bit by bit. Soon after, the mouse, which was lying dying in the box, disappeared. Instead, it stood up and ran back and forth in the box alive, and its squeaking sounds became full of joy. Some freshmen who had never seen Kaido exclaimed in surprise. As this Kaido? So cool. Obviously the mouse was seriously injured, but it was cured so quickly. I really want to learn Kaido so that I won't be afraid of getting hurt in the future. Rukia Kuchiki bumped Su Chen's arm with her elbow on the table. Although it's not as good as Captain Unohana, my Kaido is not bad either. If you don't understand it in class, you can ask me and I'll teach you. But Kaido depends on your talent. If your talent is not good, there is nothing I can do. Although Su Chen must have been exposed to Kido, not everyone can learn Kaido. The essence of Kaido involves the delicate manipulation of spiritual beings, which is no less difficult than a cell-level repair surgery. If done improperly, it may even aggravate the injury of the injured person. On the podium, Unohana Retsu explained the key points of Kaido and said in a gentle voice, "Everyone, let's give it a try to see if you have the talent to practice Kaido." Chapter 16, Advanced Kaido. As the teaching of Unohana Retsu ended and the practical test came, more than 100 students in the classroom also used Kaido one by one. Kaido is really too difficult. It's not something that ordinary people can learn at all. Hadō with enhanced combat power is more suitable for me. Kaido requires a lot of talent, and there are very few people who can learn it. Even if many people are talented, successfully performing Kaido is something that requires years of practice and more practice. So there is no one who can successfully cure mice. Sitting on the other side of Su Chen are the three people Makami and Wesui we met just now. Makami Wesui stretched his right hand forward, stacked his left hand on top of his right hand, and controlled his Reiatsu towards the injured mouse. A faint green light emitted from the palm of her hand, and the spirit seeds gathered at the mouse's wound. Granulation grew between the two parts, and then gradually connected, and finally the mouse's tail was completely restored. Success. Successfully cast Kaido in one go. Could it be said that Makami Wesui is a Kaido genius? Many people showed expressions of amazement. Makami Asui lowered his head shyly after listening to these people's praises. Unohana Retsu brought Katetsu Aizen to the nearby area at some point, with admiration in his eyes. It's a great thing to be able to successfully cast Kaido for the first time. What's your name? Thank you, Captain Unohana. My name is Makami Rusui. Her tone was a little brisk, and she was happy because she was praised by Unohana Retsu. Are you interested in joining our fourth team after graduation? I haven't thought about it yet. Makami hesitated, as if he couldn't think anymore. Unohana Retsu smiled softly, giving people a gentle and watery feeling. It's okay, you can choose before graduation. Even if you join a certain first team in the future, you can always join the fourth team. Thank you, Captain Unohana. A happy smile appeared on Makami Retsu's face, and he bowed deeply to Unohana Retsu. That's great, Makami. Well done, it seems your Kaido talent is particularly good. Makami Asui's two friends were also happy for her. Ryoka in the mirror patted Makami Osui's hand, hating her for not living up to expectations and saying, Captain Unohana invited you to join the 4th Division. Why didn't you agree to such a good opportunity? Makami Asui looked into his friend's eyes and said, because I want to enter the same division with you after graduation, so that we can still be the same as when we were in school. That would be great. Lingua in the mirror was speechless for a moment. With a friend like this, what else could I ask for? Rukia Kuchiki greeted Unohana Retsu. I've met Captain Unohana. Unohana Retsu nodded. Since you are here today, let me see how much your Kaido has improved over the years. Rukia Kuchiki nodded. Speaking of which, her Kaido is also inherited from Unohana Retsu. When he was in Spiritual Arts Academy, he was the Kaido genius in the academy. Like Makami Wesui, he used Kaido from the beginning. He looked intently at the white mouse in front of him. The number of his own guinea pig is 78. The one in front of Su Chen is 79 inches. Mouse number 78 was seriously injured. There was a bloody wound on its belly. It lay on the table with a lifeless expression. It moved its legs from time to time to prove that it was not dead. Green light emanates from Rukia Kuchiki's hands, wrapping the mouse. Soon the wound on the belly of the mouse lying on the table was covered with granulation. It didn't take long for the mouse to fully recover and start jumping around in the box. Retsu nodded. Yes, your Kaido has improved a lot. Everyone praised this scene. Kuchiki-sensei is so awesome. As expected of one of the four great nobles. Rukia Kuchiki looked at Chen and said expectantly, why don't you try it too and see how your Kaido talent is? Mouse number 79 in front of Chen looks no different from the mice of other classmates, except for minor injuries such as a broken tail. The only difference may be that this mouse is a little immobile and lies motionless in the box. Chen tried to recall in his mind all the details of Kaido used by Retsu just now. With the help of Heaven-Defying Comprehension, he has already memorized every move of Retsu, every breath and movement, and even the flow of spiritual power in Retsu's body and the changes in Reiatsu's strength. In the eyes of others, Retsu may just be a gentle woman. But in Chen's eyes, he could clearly see that Retsu's Reiatsu contained a very heavy and thick murderous aura, entangled in Retsu's soul like the deep sea of blood prison. Kaido. Through precise control of Reiatsu, it causes the self-healing of the spirit within the opponent's body. You watch Retsu use Kaido and successfully comprehend advanced Kaido. Close black lens bracket. The light representing Kaido lit up on Chen's right hand. The light is gentle and warm, as if it's spring when all things grow. Rukia Kuchiki opened her eyes in surprise when she saw the Kaido in Chen's hand and felt the Reiatsu contained in it. Unexpectedly, Chen also has Kaido talent. Could it be that I actually misunderstood Chen and that he was really a genius? People around him were shocked when they saw this scene. I didn't expect Chen's Kaido talent to be so good. Another Kaido genius. By the way, have you never met classmate Chen before? Makami Ruosui also felt a little strange in his heart. I didn't expect that among the new students, there would be someone who could comprehend Kaido like me. Doesn't that mean that they are the only two special existences in the new life? Hirano Sora looked at the Kaido light condensed in his hand. The light was still flickering, showing an extremely unstable state. It disappeared completely within a few seconds. Hearing the shocked words about Chen, Hirano Sora glanced at Chen with jealousy in his eyes. It's just a mere Kaido, so what if you don't have any talent? Hadō for combat is the standard for measuring strength. Retsu also had admiration in his eyes. Being able to successfully cast Kaido on the first try is a gift that goes without saying. However, Chen couldn't help but be a little surprised at this time. Because under his Kaido treatment, although Mouse No 79's tail gradually recovered, it still did not move. Could it be that? Chapter 17, Resurrection from the Dead. Under the treatment of Chen Senior Kaido, although the mouse's tail healed bit by bit, the mouse showed no signs of movement. Everyone else's attention was shocked that Chen could understand Kaido, but they didn't notice it for the time being. Chen let out a sigh of relief in his heart. It seemed that the mouse's injury was not as simple as it seemed. Even though the injuries to the tail have been healed, the mouse still shows no signs of movement. Furthermore, the docking of the tail was not a fatal injury, and the mouse had been motionless in the box before. Could it be said that this rat is dead? Everything in Soul Society is made up of souls. If the mouse's previous souls are completely restored, can this mouse be resurrected to a certain extent? This is what Chen thinks and does. You tried to resurrect a mouse and successfully understood. Resurrection from the dead. Close black lens bracket. The Kaido in Chen's hands seemed to have changed a little. Although it is still green light, there is a hint of red in this green light, but the power within it is secretly different. The eyes of White Mouse number 79 gradually lit up, and the meaning of agility filled its eyes. As soon as it woke up, it crawled around in the box, jumping around like a rabbit. When everyone saw this scene, they didn't pay too much attention to it. They just thought that Chen had treated the mouse's injury normally. Retsu also felt a little surprised. Unexpectedly, there could be two people with Kaido talent among the freshmen. Is your name Chen? If you are interested, you are always welcome to join the 4th division. Katetsu Aizen stood behind Retsu and leaned out to take a look at Chen. Chen is really good looking. Wouldn't it be nice to join the 4th team? Kaido's class has ended here, Retsu said. That's the end of today's class, get out of class is over. As Retsu finished speaking, the students all rushed out, and the classroom was noisy for a while. Chen, Rukia Kuchiki and others also left the Kaido classroom. Retsu ordered to Katetsu Aizen, Yugon, collect these mice. Yes, Captain. Katetsu Aizen began to pack up. It didn't take long for Katetsu Aizen to pack up more than 100 mice and pack them into several boxes. Let's go to Division 12. After that, Chen and Rukia Kuchiki walked out of the classroom. As the two walked along, Rukia Kuchiki wanted to speak several times, but hesitated. You want to ask me why I know Kaido? Chen had already seen through Rukia Kuchiki's doubts. If you feel it's not appropriate to tell me, then you don't have to say it, I understand. Rukia Kuchiki smiled gently. There's nothing I can't say. You can understand that my understanding is a bit strong. Are you a bit savvy? Rukia Kuchiki was stunned for a moment. Chen can learn Kaido at the speed of light that others can learn in months or even years. Isn't this just a little bit better? This understanding is already heaven-defying, right? Well, since you said so, I believe it, Chen, the heaven-defying savvy. Rukia Kuchiki said half-jokingly. The two chatted for a while, and Rukia Kuchiki said, actually, after teaching Kido class, I should go back to the squad. It has been delayed for a long time. If you want to find me, you are welcome to come to the 13th squad and let me know. I will do my best to be a landlord. Of course, I will come to Spiritual Arts Academy to see you when I have time, and… Rukia Kuchiki took out a doll that still had body heat from her arms. A bit like a bear, a bit like a cat, and a bit like a rabbit. In short, he has a big face and 2 long ears, so he should be like a rabbit. This is Chabby the rabbit, one of my favorite things. After Chen took the warm doll, Rukia Kuchiki ran away with her head lowered, and her expression could not be seen clearly. I pinched the doll's face, and it felt soft. It sank in and then bounced up. The 2 ears also swayed, which was quite cute. Well, let's put it away first. Chen took it into his arms. Yunohana Retsu brought Kotetsu Aizen to the 12th division. Division 12 is located in a relatively secluded place. After all, with so much research done every day, it is inevitable that there will be dangerous projects. If it is in the core area, it is difficult not to cause some damage. From the outside, the 12th division looks like an ordinary building, but if someone breaks into it without permission, you will find that there are many insidious mechanisms hidden inside, and you don't even know how you died. A beautiful girl stood at the door of the 12th division. The girl had a slender figure and a slender figure. Just one glance can deeply attract people's attention. She has dark purple hair and a circle of flat bangs along her forehead that looks like a princess cut. There are 2 bunches of long hair hanging down on both sides of the temples, from thick to thin, like icicles on the eaves in winter. There is a long purple braid on the back of her head, which looks like a candied hawse, and the end of the long braid is tied with a red rope. There are white bandages wrapped around her wrists. She is wearing a black Shinigami costume, and the white bandages are tightly wrapped around her waist, highlighting her peaks even more. There is a red neck ring around her neck, and she wears a short skirt on her lower body, revealing a pair of legs that are as strong as frost and snow. At this time, her legs are tightly together, standing slim at the door. Although she is so beautiful, her eyes are unwavering, like a robot lacking emotion. Wearing the vice captain's armband on her left arm, it was none other than the vice captain of the 12th division, Nyanyimu. After seeing Yunohana Retsu and Kotetsu Aizen, Nirvana bowed meticulously and said, Captain Yunohana, I have been waiting here for a long time. Captain Nirvana seems to have something to tell you. Yunohana Retsu nodded. After Kotetsu Aizen saw Nirvana, she still felt that the vice captain was a little strange and didn't look like a normal person, but she didn't think much about it. Maybe it was due to his personality. There are also people who are born with facial paralysis. After the 3 of them entered the 12th division. Once you step in, you will immediately feel like you are in a different world, and everything is filled with the steely atmosphere of scientific research. Many different scientific research rooms were isolated, some were filled with wires and sparks, some had various animal specimens, some had various small pills. Not long after, several people came to the captain's room. After opening the door, it was dark inside, with only the blue light on the screen flashing. Kuretsuchi Mayuri was sitting in front of the screen, his fingers flying on the keyboard like tentacles, and the data on the screen jumped so fast that it was hard to see clearly. At this time, Kuretsuchi Mayuri said something that surprised everyone present. Chapter 18, an absolute masterpiece. Kuretsuchi Mayuri glanced back and saw that it was Yunohana Retsu. He said in his somewhat strange tone, by the way, there was a mistake in the mouse I gave you before. One of them is dead. Yunohana Retsu was stunned. Dead. Kotetsu Aizen's eyes widened in surprise. One of them is dead. Kuretsuchi Mayuri said. This incident was an accident on our side. The mouse is definitely no longer treatable by Kaido. Although Kaido can heal injuries, it cannot turn death into life. So, this matter is an oversight on our part. Wait a minute, Captain Nirvana. Kotetsu Aizen interrupted, with a look on her face as to how this was possible. After my inspection, every mouse is still alive. This is impossible. Kuretsuchi Mayuri suddenly raised her head a few degrees. My data cannot be wrong. That mouse must be dead. Kotetsu Aizen was startled. What was the number of the mouse that died? Number 79. Kotetsu Aizen took out mouse number 79 from the box. She saw the mouse crawling everywhere on her palm, giving her an itchy feeling. Looking at the mark number 79 on the mouse's back, Kuretsuchi Mayuri froze in place as if he was stupid. Even the hands that were typing furiously on the keyboard stopped completely. Looking at the lively mice, Yunohana Retsu suddenly smiled. He is clearly a gentle Yunohana Retsu, but under this smile he feels as cold as falling into an ice cellar. It's like the surprise of discovering something interesting. Has Chen's Kaido level reached the peak of Kaido, or even surpassed Kaido, reaching a realm that ordinary people cannot imagine? Interesting. This is so much fun. Kuretsuchi Mayuri murmured like a demon, her face wearing a black and white mask twisted, and her eyes revealed a crazy look like a demon. He stood up from his seat and eagerly grabbed the mouse from Kotetsu Aizen's hand, placing it less than a few centimeters in front of his eyes and observing it carefully. Let me check it out. It has been a long time since Kuretsuchi Mayuri encountered something that made her feel so excited. He put the mouse into the instrument, and then his fingers jumped quickly on the keyboard, and a large amount of data appeared. Comparing with the previous data of this mouse, all indicators are exactly the same. Kuretsuchi Mayuri was shocked. Masterpiece. An absolute masterpiece. Whose handiwork is this? How did he do that? How can a dead mouse be brought back to life? This is definitely not something ordinary Kaido can do. Perfect peace. Not only was the injury cured, but the mouse's soul was restored, down to every spirit child. What an amazing level. Who cured it? Kotetsu Aizen was a little confused and didn't react yet. It's a student from Spiritual Arts Academy. I think his name is Chen. Chen. He is actually just a student at the Spiritual Arts Academy. Genius. Absolute genius. This person's scientific research talent is definitely not inferior to mine. Kuretsuchi Mayuri is not shy about her praise. You must know that there are only a few methods that can control the soul. He couldn't help but look at Ni Yin Meng. Speaking of which, the essence of Nirvana is artificial Shinigami. Nirvana is a man-made Shinigami, Mian number 7 inches created through Yi skeleton technology and Yi soul technology. The reason why it is defined as sleep is because this kind of thing cannot be done while awake, and can only occur in dreams. But now, there is actually a technology that you can't see through that can bring mice back to life. Did he completely create an identical soul and stuff it into the body of mouse number 79 after he was healed of his injuries? Or did he resurrect mouse number 79 in some way beyond his own understanding? How on earth did you do that? A crazy smile appeared on Kuretsuchi Mayuri's face. For this reason, Kuretsuchi Mayuri needs more detailed research. Kuretsuchi Mayuri seemed to be fascinated and conducted various studies on mice. I don't know how long it will take Captain Ni to study it. I'll take you to the lounge to sit for a while. Yunohana Retsu nodded. Ninmeng explained. The captain is like this. Once he encounters something that interests him, he will forget to eat and sleep, and he has to study the matter clearly. Yunohana Retsu smiled slightly. Don't say it's him, even I am very interested in Chen now. Chen. Ni Yinmeng thought about the name for a moment. He couldn't remember how long it had been since Kuretsuchi Mayuri's expression had fluctuated greatly. Was it Chen who made the captain show that surprised expression? The three of them arrived at the lounge. The lounge has a table and 4 futons for kneeling. Ninmeng was sitting at the table, making 2 cups of tea. Soon the aroma of tea overflowed and wisps of smoke rose. Captain Yunohana and Vice Captain Kotetsu, please use them with caution. I have something else to do, so I'll excuse you for now. Ninmeng bowed as an apology, tapped her toes, and exited without making the slightest sound. At the same time, she also closed the horizontal door that slid like a window. Yunohana Retsu took a sip of tea. The tea from Division 12 tastes average. For these research geeks, tea leaves are bought from outside and can be drunk, and they don't have any tea tasting skills. However, if they can increase Reiatsu's spiritual tea development, it would be one of their research projects. After taking a sip of Yunohana Retsu, he shook his head and put down the teacup. Kotetsu Aizen couldn't help but said in shock. Captain, we didn't realize that the person named Chen didn't cure mouse number 79 at all, but resurrected it. Although I don't know how it was done. Yunohana Retsu's expression became much more serious. Yongyan, you must be stricter with your mouth. Do you know what the word resurrection means to Soul Society? Quote. Kotetsu Aizen shook his head. If word spreads about Chen's ability to resurrect things, Soul Society will definitely cause a bloody storm because of him. Quote. I don't know how many people who don't want to die will go to him, and they may even seize the people Chen cares about to threaten him. The older those people in the nobility are, the more they are afraid of death. In their eyes, Chen will become a person who can extend their lives. Or maybe they want to use Chen's ability to see if they can resurrect certain dead beings. Even if there is only one chance in 10,000, they will do whatever it takes to make Chen's ability work for them. Kotetsu Aizen patted his chest with a look of fear on his face. I understand, Captain. After saying goodbye to Rukia Kuchiki, Chen walked to a square in the college. This is a circular square, about the size of a football field. There is a large fountain in the center, which is constantly spraying water, and the water is glowing with gold in the sun. There are rows of seats around, and behind the seats are woods, where you can smell the fragrance of young leaves. From time to time, you can still see some students walking by. There is also a billboard-like billboard near the square. Chen took a closer look and found a map, which marked various places in the Spiritual Arts Academy like a tourist area, as well as its current location, to prevent some people from getting lost. Some common locations are marked on it, such as various classrooms and the Spiritual Arts Academy's large library. You can go and have a look. Chapter 19 As small as dust. Su Chen came to the big library as shown on the map. The whole thing looks like a bird's nest-like structure, with an empty center and a ring outside. After walking in, I found that it was divided into 4 different areas, namely cutting, boxing, walking, and ghost. Various books from beginner to grandmaster are arranged in categories. There are already many students who have taken books and read, and many people have come to the large open space in the middle, where many trees are planted and there is a sand field used for practice. Some students read the information in the book and practiced on the battlefield. Su Chen first came to Kido District. Whether it's Hadō, Bakudo, or Kaido, it's all here. On the other side of Su Chen, Makami Ruosui, Jingli Lingua, and Kusaki Yinhua had just found a seat to sit down in the library, and they were a little surprised to find that Su Chen was also here. In the mirror, Lingua pulled the clothes of her 2 friends and said, "Look, classmate Su Chen is there. Why don't we ask him to come over and read a book together?" Makami Rusui was a little shy and didn't dare to get up. "Lingua, you go ahead." "You." In the mirror, Lingua pushed her friend, then stood up, her refreshing short ponytail swaying happily in the air. "Classmate Su Chen, it turns out you are here too." Su Chen turned around and nodded. "Su Chen, are you reading Hadō's books?" The entire library of Spiritual Arts Academy is filled with junior Kido numbers 1 to 30. The second floor is for those with numbers 30 to 60, and the third floor is for those with numbers 60 and above. In the mirror, Linghua's hands were clasped behind her back, tangled together nervously, and she came to Su Chen's side and said with a smile. "I see." Su Chen nodded lightly. Mirror Ryoka said, "Since Su Chen wants to read Hadō's book, why don't we sit down and read it together?" Yes. Su Chen didn't refuse. It was a good experience to have 3 beautiful girls study with him. Jingli Lingua breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't expect to be so successful and invited Su Chen. Su Chen took down the book written by one of Hadō. I also took the books from Hadō number 2 to Hadō no. 10. Then he sat across from Lingua and others in the mirror. Open one of Hadō's books. The book not only contains Hadō's chants, but also draws diagrams of the flow of spiritual power in the body, and even has the insights of some outstanding people written on it. A gifted person can learn Hadō just by reading these books. The library is full of brown log tables, with 2 benches on both sides of the table. Due to his petite stature, Makami Wesui's feet naturally floated slightly in the air when he sat on the stool, kicking and swinging a few times while holding a book in both hands. Although she has Kaido's talent, she doesn't seem to have Hadō's talent. Although she reads Hadō's books very seriously, she can't comprehend much. Confused by the content of the book, she put down the book, raised her hands above her head, stretched, and slightly exposed the curve of the bud on her chest. Naturally, I looked up and saw Su Chen opposite me. After staring at Su Chen's face for a while, I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. Classmate Su Chen looks really good looking. Just staring at him like this makes my heart beat faster. But she soon noticed another point, that is, Su Chen read books too fast. No, it can no longer be described as looking, but turning over. It's impossible for a normal person to see that fast. It turns a page almost every second, and this speed seems to be getting faster and faster. Makami Ruosui opened his mouth in surprise. "Student Su Chen, do you read so fast?" Su Chen smiled and said, "I just looked at all Hadō's names. I haven't read the contents in detail yet. Whether it's saying that I have heaven-defying savvy or that I have the ability to have a photographic memory, it's hard to explain." In the eyes of others, they would only think that it was impossible for Su Chen to do it, and they would even ask Su Chen to prove whether he really had a photographic memory. Su Chen didn't bother to explain. Oh, Makami Wesui couldn't help but pursed his lips. He was so good looking and had such a good Kaido talent. Maybe Hadō's talent was also outstanding, but why didn't he pay any attention to learning Hadō? It was the same thing when I was taking Mr. Kuchiki's class, and I skipped class halfway. Su Chen, you must not fall like this. You have to work hard, and strive to become a strong Shinigami. Makami Ruosui waved his little fist and cheered Su Chen cutely. Su Chen's face suddenly turned serious, which startled Makami Ruosui. What's wrong? Makami Ruosui said a little scared. Su Chen said, "Do you know what you are talking about?" "What's it called?" Makami Ruosui had a blank expression on his face. "Chicken soup. Chicken soup." Makami Waishui was very puzzled. "Isn't chicken soup for drinking?" "In my hometown, the chicken soup ratio is very beautiful. After listening to it, it's like being injected with chicken blood. I feel very motivated for an instant, but it doesn't change the actual situation. After the chicken blood passes, I feel the reality again. Cruel and ruthless." "Classmate Su Chen, you are so young, why do you speak so maturely?" Makami asked softly. "Student Su Chen, I don't agree with what you said. It's like the withered grass in the yard. If I don't take care of it, it may die in just a few days. But if I water it, it will survive on its own, so it may not have no hope of survival. Although we are all just ordinary students of Soul Society, we haven't even joined the squad yet, we haven't obtained sealed state, we haven't learned Hadō, We are as light as dust, as small as dust, but aren't Seraiti made of dust like us? To say the least, we are all still flowers at Spiritual Arts Academy. There are endless possibilities in the future. Maybe it will be one of us who changes the world in the future. Makami Ruishui stared into Su Chen's eyes, feeling for the first time that he was so courageous. Su Chen smiled and said, Makami is giving me chicken soup again. Makami Ruishui puffed up his mouth and turned away angrily. Ignore you, bad Su Chen. Student Su Chen is like a dead duck, not afraid of boiling water at all. He has the toughest mouth in the whole body. Chapter 20, Lingquan. However, Su Chen's heart was somewhat touched. Unexpectedly, an ordinary student in Seraiti also has a dream as brilliant as a rainbow. It's a pity that the Shinigami world is a world that values bloodline, talent, and potential. Shinigami's training is more about developing one's own soul potential, which is restricted by talent. In this case, let's see for ourselves how far they can go. I will show you a magic trick that can turn water into wine. Do you believe it? Su Chen said seriously. Cut. Do not believe. Don't believe me. Then you three bring me the water glasses and I'll show you the changes. Makami and Wisui all showed very curious expressions. Although they didn't believe it on the surface, they were all looking forward to it. Give. The three of them took out their own water glasses and handed them to Su Chen. HMPH, I want to see how you change. Lingua in the mirror rested her elbows on the table, put the heels of her hands together, holding her chin like a flower, looking at Su Chen with wide eyes. Every move. Su Chen first picked up the pink water cup of Makami Wisui and shook it in his hand. It seems that there is no change, but in fact the water in the water cup has turned into a kind of spiritual spring under the influence of Spirit Sun control. The spiritual spring contains high-level souls with spiritual power, which can stimulate their potential, strengthen their talents, and enable them to awaken their own abilities faster. Okay, now it's turned into wine. Real or fake? Makami Wisui picked up his water glass, opened it and smelled it, and found that there was nothing special about it. If you don't believe me, why don't you try drinking it? Makami took a sip of weak water and immediately felt something extraordinary. The ordinary water he usually drank became a little strange for the first time. This feeling is hard to describe. It feels like a spicy taste, but also like an unbearably strong irritation. It feels like all the cells in the body are trembling. All in all, it's a very special feeling. No way, it really turned into wine. Su Chen, how did you do that? Makami Wisui transformed into a curious baby. Linghua's eyes widened in the mirror. She was clearly looking at Su Chen and did nothing. Why did water turn into wine? What kind of magic is this? How did Su Chen do it? He quickly took Su Chen's hand and shook it coquettishly, saying in a bone-crushing tone, Su Chen Gurgur, I want it too, I want it too. I've never had a drink. In Rukongai, because of the shortage of food, the wine that needs to be brewed is even more precious. Su Chen is exactly the same, turning the water of water chestnuts and flowers in the mirror into spiritual springs. Try it. Mirror Ryoka and Kusuki Enka took the water glasses and took a cautious sip. Sure enough, it had turned into wine. A sense of excitement spread throughout their bodies, and their bodies became warm. Lingua blinked curiously in the mirror. Brother Su Chen, how did you do it? Please tell me. Su Chen shook her finger. No, once the magic is exposed, it is no longer called magic. HMPH, bad guy Su Chen. Then the library became very quiet. Su Chen read the book quickly. Open black lens bracket. You successfully understood one of Hadō Chong. Close black lens bracket. You successfully understood Hadō no. 4. White thunder. Close black lens bracket. You have successfully understood Hadō number 11. Thunder and lightning. Close black lens bracket. It didn't take long for Su Chen to understand the Hadō of the first 30 numbers. Next, I realized the Bakudo of the first 30 numbers. Open black lens bracket. You successfully understood one of Bakudo Sai. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You successfully understood Bakudo number 4. The rope. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You successfully understood Bakudo's 8th rebuke. Close black lens bracket. Just when Su Chen was about to go up to the second floor to continue watching the intermediate Kido, Makami Osui gently pulled his sleeve. Su Chen expressed doubts. Student Su Chen, the self-study time is over. The next class is taught by Kuranosuke Kyoda, the teacher in charge of our elite group. You can come with us. I heard that this class is about receiving our own sealed state. Such an important thing, Su Chen, cannot miss it. Su Chen became interested and nodded. Let's go. Makami Ruishui looked at Su Chen putting away the book, and somehow thought of Su Chen's previous words. Even though he said hard work was useless, he was more attentive than anyone else when he was learning Kido. If he hadn't reminded him, classmate Su Chen wouldn't have asked about foreign affairs. It turns out that classmate Su Chen has this kind of character that doesn't mean what she says. I feel like I understand Su Chen a little bit. As I thought about it, a smile appeared at the corner of my mouth unconsciously. Makami, what are you laughing at? Asked Ryoka in the mirror. Nothing. Mikami Ruosui shook his head. After packing up, the four of them walked towards the elite first-level classroom. The afternoon sun was just right, and the four of them walked under the shade of the trees. There are many students around them who are also moving in their own directions. Soon the four of them arrived at the elite group's classroom. There are rows of long tables in the classroom, and students can choose where to sit. When Chen and four others came here, many people had already sat down, and a few people randomly chose a seat to sit down. As the school bell rang, Kuranosuke Kyoto, who was tall and strong and had a serious face, walked in. After coughing twice to clear his throat, Kyoto Kuranosuke said, "Roll the roll first." Then he took out a board in his hand. There was a list on the board. Kuranosuke Kyoto read the names one by one according to the list. When he read the name, he said, "Arrive." Soon all the names on the list were called, leaving only the last name, Chen. Next, let me introduce you to a transfer student. Everyone was a little surprised when they heard the word transfer student. You must know that not just anyone can join the group at Spiritual Arts Academy, so this person must have something extraordinary. Hirano Kongjin's eyes narrowed. As a lower-level noble, he immediately thought of whether the other party was also a noble. Used the privileges of the nobility to enter the Spiritual Arts Academy. If the other party is a mid-level noble, he will have to work hard to curry favor with him. Mikami and Wisui were also a little surprised. Who will be the transfer student? Could it be classmate Chen? After all, I didn't seem to have seen classmate Chen during the Reiatsu test before enrolling.